Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel's Planeswalkers. Chapter 61. Black, who had just come out of Azkaban, had obviously not yet learned to control his violent temper. After all, he had been tortured by Dementors for 12 years. It was normal for him to have a temper that needed to be vented. So when Blake saw Creature crying and mumbling to himself on the experimental table, but never telling what items Li Feng had taken, Blake couldn't help but want to vent the accumulated resentment in his heart by beating Creature. Fortunately, Dumbledore put some chocolate in his pocket when he went to the Black Mansion. Just eating a piece of chocolate can cure the Dementor's happiness-sucking attack. This is also an effective recovery method after contact with the Dementor. Passing the chocolate to Black, Dumbledore said, "Black, order Creature to tell what Austin took." After swallowing the chocolate hungrily, Blake, who felt much better, looked at Creature and ordered, "Now, immediately, tell me what the items were taken away." Creature stopped crying under Black's instruction and whispered, "It's a locket. It is the most evil object in this house. Before Master Regulus died, he ordered Creature to destroy the locket, but Creature had no use for it. Neither a drill nor an axe could destroy the box. Creature had disappointed Master Regulus. Dumbledore, what kind of locket is it?" Creature looked at Dumbledore, as if he had just discovered him, and bowed respectfully and said, "Good evening, the greatest white wizard in the wizarding world, Your Excellency Albert Dumbledore. That is a big snake with an S shape on its shell. The locket was stolen by Regulus Master from the Dark Lord, and the box contains the Dark Lord's secret." Dumbledore was stunned, seeming to be talking to himself and asking Creature, "Snake? The locket is related to the Dark Lord. Is it a relic of Salazar Slytherin?" Creature said that he was just a house elf and didn't know what Slytherin's relics were. He only knew that he had not fulfilled the last wish of Regulus Master. On the side, Black seemed to realize something and said angrily, "Austin's appearance of being a money man was just to show me. He knew from the beginning to the end that there was something the mysterious man needed in the Black family's secret basement. He was just forced to. He came to Azkaban to rescue me because he couldn't enter the basement. It seemed that he wanted me to allow him to enter the basement to get paid, but in fact he wanted to get that broken locket." Dumbledore frowned and said, "No matter what the mysterious man wants, we can't let him get it. The most important thing right now is to find Austin. Black, please remember what Austin said and think about him. Where will it be found?" After a long time, Black smiled bitterly and said, "Maybe I'm not suitable for inquiring about information. I can't tell where Austin will appear. The only thing I know is that he was penniless when we first met and he was not familiar with London." "Now," Black said. He glanced at the compartment where the galleons were stored and said, "By the way, he is very interested in modifying motorcycles. Maybe he will buy parts to modify the motorcycles." Lupine, who was silently guarding Black, suddenly said, "If Austin has not left London, we can look for him in hotels and other places, but we don't know whether he will stay in a hotel in the Muggle world or in the magical world. If it is later, it's quite simple. After all, there are only so many." "Good idea," Dumbledore said, gesturing for everyone to leave the basement. "I will go to Azkaban to investigate how the Dementors were controlled. Lupine and Creature will go to find Austin's whereabouts. As for Sirius, Magic, although the department doesn't know you escaped yet, it's better for you to hide at home." As he spoke, Dumbledore glanced at Black, not because Dumbledore didn't believe what Black said about Dementors, but in this world, most magic has corresponding dissolving spells. Since Li Feng is now the enemy, friends don't know it, but Dumbledore certainly wants to know more about Li Feng so that he can take precautions in future fights. The three of them returned to the gate of the old house, and Dumbledore said to Lupine and Creature, who were about to look for Li Feng, "Considering that the other party can cast spells silently and without a wand, when you find Austin, don't alert the other party and focus on surveillance. Wait, I'm making plans when I get back." Lupine nodded, walked to the side of the road, raised his wand, and summoned the night bus. Soon, a 3-story night bus stopped in front of Lupine. The conductor looked at the wand in Lupine's hand and whispered, "Oh, another one with a wand. I thought I could see the one who can catch up. Where's the Chinese guy on the bus?" Lu Ping, who got on the bus, subconsciously looked at the conductor and asked, "Have you ever seen a Chinese wizard?" At the door of the old house, Dumbledore, who was asking Black to describe the details of Li Feng's spell, turned to look at the night bus that was returning, raised his eyebrows and looked at Lupin, who got off the car, and asked, "Did you forget something?" Quote. Lupin said thank you to the conductor, turned around and walked to Dumbledore, with a slightly surprised expression on his face, and said, "Professor, I know where Austin is." He boarded the night bus not far from the Black Mansion, got off the bus at the Broken Axe Bar, and probably slept in the Broken Axe Bar by now. Dumbledore said with slight surprise, "The Broken Axe Bar? Wasn't he in a hurry to give the locket to the mysterious man?" Lupin shrugged and said, "I don't know about that. Maybe the locket has been given to the mysterious man. Maybe." After saying this, Lupin looked at Black and continued, "Maybe Austin is not the mysterious man's." The subordinate simply saw a magic item on the experimental table, thought it was some precious item, and took it away. Quote. Dumbledore thought about it and felt that what Lupin said was possible. After all, normal people would always be curious after seeing it. For example, they speculated that the locket would appear on the experimental table because the locket was worth studying. After all, according to Creature, the locket was not even destroyed, and it could not even be opened. This was said by a house elf who could cast spells without a wand. Black realized what Dumbledore was thinking, turned to Creature and said, "Go to the Broken Axe and see if Austin is in the bar. You record his every move and tell him everything when Dumbledore returns from Azkaban." Creature nodded slightly and said to himself, "I'm glad to serve the Black family. I have work to do again." As soon as the voice fell, Creature disappeared from the three people in an instant and appeared in the Broken Axe again. He tiptoed in the bar room to look for Austin. After a while, Creature stood outside a room with a big grin, listening to the snoring of Li Feng when he was sleeping. "This is Austin's voice. I heard him talking to the young master before. I remember it was this voice." After Creature muttered to himself, he thought about Blake's instructions again. Staring at Austin outside the door should not be considered staring, but staring at Austin at the bedside. When Creature appeared in the room, Li Feng's snoring disappeared instantly. After traveling through several worlds, Li Feng had long been accustomed to keeping a vigilance in the other world at all times. Even if he was lying on a soft big bed, he still had the necessary vigilance. So when Creature suddenly appeared at his bedside, Li Feng reached out to the long knife beside him without opening his eyes. When Li Feng raised his knife and saw that it was a familiar house elf, he asked uncertainly, "Creature, did Black ask you to come to me?" Creature, who heard the sound of glass breaking around him but didn't care, nodded slightly and muttered in a low voice, "Mudblood, thief, you stole the locket of Master Regulus." Without waiting for Creature to finish muttering, Li Feng pointed at the scroll wrapped in the locket with his long knife, rolled his eyes and said, "I know how to destroy it." Destroy it. As a loyal house elf, Creature was almost going crazy thinking about how to complete Regulus's orders all the time. In addition, his mind had been distorted for a long time due to long-term contact with the locket. When he heard that Li Feng could help destroy the locket, Creature's mind became clear instead. As the saying goes, people become wiser with age. Creature, who looked a little old, obviously understood that Li Feng would not help him for nothing. In exchange, Creature said that he was just an elf loyal to the Black family. Only when Li Feng told him what conditions were needed could he give an answer after considering the interests of the Black family. Creature blinked his eyes and looked at Li Feng, and said humbly, "Dear Mr. Austin, what are your conditions?" In his heart, Creature thought that if Li Feng opened his mouth, he would have the right to refuse the other party's request. After all, Dumbledore was also interested in the locket that belonged to the mysterious man. At most, he could take the locket back. I believe that Dumbledore, who likes to go against the mysterious man, would also be interested in destroying the locket. Conditions. Li Feng scratched his brow. He really couldn't think of any conditions for a while. After a while, Li Feng thought of the props he needed most at the moment and said, "Do you know how to translate? Translate the English in the magic book into Chinese characters or American English for Muggles." Li Feng's conditions made the clear-headed Creature a little confused. It was not that the conditions were too difficult, but too simple, so simple that he didn't need to do it himself. Blinking, Creature said carefully, "Dear Mr. Austin, if you need to translate fewer books, Creature is happy to serve you. If you translate more books, Creature reminds you that you can buy a special quill pen for translation." Li Feng was stunned. In his impression, the wizards in this world like to isolate themselves from the sight of the world. Even if they have exchanges with the outside world, they are with foreign wizards, not muggles. After Creature's explanation, Li Feng remembered that although the wizards in this world like to be isolated, there are still a group of people who like the muggle world and make a living from it. For example, there is a subject in Hogwarts called Muggle Studies. Since this group of people who study muggles will inevitably use books, newspapers, etc. to collect information, so the quill pen for translation is also born. Since the quill pen can translate muggle books into books from the magical world, the quill pen can also translate books from the magical world into books from the muggle world. However, this kind of quill pen is a bit expensive. After all, there are too few people who need it. But who is Li Feng? He treats Black's basement vault as his own home. Is he someone who is short of those gold galleons? Li Feng knew more than 2 ways to destroy the locket, such as his own pseudo-angel feathers or the spell on the Key of Solomon. This book is full of spells to restrain demons, and demons most of the time choose to possess humans. In order to save humans and eliminate demons at the same time, Li Feng learned a lot of exorcisms from it. The mysterious man's behavior of hiding his soul in the locket is barely considered possession, so Li Feng has many ways to expel the mysterious man's soul from the locket. The only uncertainty is that the mysterious man's soul still belongs to human beings. Li Feng doesn't know whether the spell used to destroy the devil will be effective. What if the mysterious man's soul is too powerful to defeat or makes the opponent run away? What will Li Feng do with Dumbledore? Trade an empty locket. Considering the above, after listening to Creature's introduction to the translation quill, Li Feng pinched his nose and admitted that he was unlucky and said, "Method 1 is to find Gryffindor's sword, which can break the locket." Quote. Creature's mouth twitched. Of course he knew about Gryffindor's sword, but he also knew that it had been missing for hundreds of years. Even if he was lucky enough to find the sword, he probably wouldn't have had time to use the sword to split the locket. He was found by other people looking for the sword, and in order to keep the sword for himself, he was dried into meat. With his eyes wide open, Creature said quietly, "What about method 2? Li Feng, who was sure that Harry was already in his 2nd year, certainly knew that the basilisk had appeared, but he just didn't know where the plot was going. After scratching his head, Li Feng asked, "Do you know the basilisk that stares at anyone and kills them?" Creature turned his head and thought for a moment, then asked uncertainly, "Is the basilisk you are talking about a dangerous snake with extraordinary abilities hatched from a male egg under the body of a toad?" Li Feng grinned and nodded. To be honest, even though Li Feng considered himself a magician and had seen enough strange species, he still couldn't help but laugh when he heard about a male egg. How busy do you think this egg-laying rooster is? Let's not talk about which organ the rooster's eggs are conceived from. Let's just say that this rooster crows and lays eggs. Is this preparing to steal the hen's job and make him a workaholic? What does this make the hens in the same bed think? And the toad that hatches the eggs has so much free time. This is really playing with eggs. Seeing Li Feng nod in recognition, Creature clearly felt a surging blood flow in his body rushing to his brain, and the cerebral blood clots were flushed away. He suddenly felt refreshed or furious. If the Ministry of Magic hadn't strictly ordered house elves not to harm humans, Creature would have wanted to split open Li Feng's brain while he was clear-headed to see where the legendary basilisk could be found in reality. Can the basilisk destroy the locket? Why don't you just open Merlin's coffin and let Merlin drag the mysterious man into the underworld? Seeing Creature's eyes full of contempt, Li Feng couldn't guess what Creature was thinking, and said indifferently, "I really know where there is a basilisk. The problem is that I can't defeat that thing unless you find a way to blind it, or else." Li Feng lay down on the bed and covered himself with a quilt and said, "Otherwise, let's just take a shower. Anyway, I won't face the basilisk alone. That's not destroying the locket, it's courting death." Creature, who was beside the bed, lowered his head and looked like he was thinking seriously before gritting his teeth and saying, "If the basilisk loses those eyes, will you help me destroy the locket?" Li Feng, who was resting with his hands on his hands and eyes closed, sat up after hearing Creature's words and looked up and down at Creature, and said, "Listen to your tone, are you going to blind the basilisk even at the cost of your own life?" Creature stared at Li Feng with bloodshot eyes, looking arrogantly, and asked an unexpected question. "My biggest ideal is to cut off my head like my mother and stick it on a plaque of the Black family." Does this count as answering my question sideways and telling me my last words? Although he knew that house elves were very loyal once they recognized their master, Li Feng was still surprised by Creature's behavior. For the sake of his former master who had been dead for who knows how many years, he actually wanted to fulfill his last wish even though he knew he would sacrifice himself. What does the current owner, Sirius, think? But it seems like I want a house elf so loyal. In fact, if Li Feng really wants to destroy the locket, there is a simple way. It is so simple that he only needs to wait patiently. Even if Li Feng doesn't know where Harry's plot will develop, the basilisk will definitely appear and fall in love with the protagonist of this world as the plot advances. And under the aura of Harry, who has the protagonist's halo, the beautiful monster around him is called pets and ugly monsters are called delicious and juicy food, so the basilisk, which looks smelly and ugly at first glance, is destined to be just a pile of delicious snake soup. Of course, this requires you to have enough courage to try the taste of snake meat. People like Li Feng would not dare to try the taste of the basilisk, even if the basilisk is hatched from an egg and is born with a crispy chicken flavor. The quality of the meat is far more nutritious than beef n times the protein. If you dare not, don't dare. Li Feng said that he would never eat the meat of a basilisk. Who knows if there is anything strange about this basilisk that has lived for hundreds of years. Of parasites. Thinking of parasites crawling in his body, Li Feng, who cherished life, shuddered slightly and said, "You told me about the special quill for translation, and I told you 2 methods. This is reasonable, but you want me to please forgive me for risking my life and destroying the locket." Creature shook his head slightly and said unconvinced, "But you can buy the quill I mentioned at the magical items store, but where can I buy the sword and basilisk you mentioned?" "That's something you need to investigate," Li Feng spread his hands and said, "or can we change the deal? For example, we agree that as long as the locket is destroyed during the summer vacation at Hogwarts this year, you will have to obey my orders in the future." "Sorry," Creature said without thinking, "I am an elf from the Black family, and I only serve the Black family." Although he knew that he couldn't recruit Creature in this way, Li Feng felt that it would be okay to try it. He wouldn't get pregnant after trying it anyway, but Creature's clean refusal made Li Feng somewhat unhappy. "Why don't you ask Sirius what he thinks?" Li Feng, who was somewhat unwilling, still tried to seduce Creature and said, "Maybe Sirius is fed up with your neurosis and agrees to transfer you to me." Creature was stunned. He knew how much Sirius hated him. Now that Sirius knew that the locket belonged to the mysterious man, once Li Feng asked to trade with the locket, Creature felt that he should probably change his owner. Creature was a little tangled. He was originally prepared to dedicate his life to the Black family, but now he had to destroy the locket according to Regulus's last wish and fulfill his last loyalty. On the other hand, he ignored Regulus's last wish and continued to dedicate the rest of his life to the Black family. After a long time, Creature, who felt confused again, chose to complete Regulus's last wish and said, "I will go back and ask Sirius and give you an answer. I hope you can keep your promise." After that, Creature, who was about to teleport back to the Black Mansion, cast a spell and stared at Li Feng in front of him. What's going on? Even Hogwarts, which prohibits apparition movement, cannot prohibit the teleportation of elves. Will the Broken Axe Bar have a more advanced teleportation prohibition array? Li Feng grinned. The mirror space is an independent space. It would be strange if you can get out. Li Feng stretched out his hand to open the portal and signaled Creature to try teleporting again. This time, Creature looked at Li Feng and muttered something while disappearing in front of Li Feng in an instant. After a while, Creature appeared in front of Li Feng again with a smile on his face, muttering, "Mudblood thief, you want to be my master." When he saw Li Feng staring at him, Creature smiled silently. "Sirius asked me to tell you, get lost." As for the reason for the refusal, Creature imitated Sirius's tone of voice and said, "House elves are a symbol of nobility. You are just a poor ghost who ran out of nowhere. Since you dare to use a broken locket stolen from my house to exchange for the glory of nobility. This is not a broken locket, but one of the Horcruxes of the mysterious man." Li Feng looked at Creature and interrupted before Creature finished speaking. "If you don't know what a Horcrux is, you can ask Sirius. I think the Black family, which has been passed down for so many years, will know something about Horcruxes." Creature was stunned. He just knew that the locket was the Dark Lord's item, and he really didn't know what it was used for. Just as Creature was thinking about what a Horcrux was, Li Feng continued, besides, Sirius and I agreed that the things in the basement belonged to me if I took them. So strictly speaking, the locket was the reward for me saving Sirius from Azkaban. It belongs to me, and you can't describe me as a thief. Also, Creature, we agreed that I would help you destroy the locket during the summer vacation at Hogwarts, not give the locket to Sirius as a condition for exchanging you. If you want the locket, then wait for me to add conditions. After all, you are not the only ones who want the locket, so I am not in the mood to bargain with you. Creature seemed to understand something, and said incredulously, you still want to trade with the Dark Lord? I just simply don't like Sirius and want to scare you, is that not okay? He thought so in his heart, but Li Feng said, is it not possible? Having experienced the previous prohibition of teleportation, Creature understood that Li Feng was not someone who could not fight back, especially when he thought that his former master had risked his life to steal the locket back, but Li Feng was going to trade with the mysterious man. This made Creature feel a headache, a lot of pain. With his head drooping, Creature disappeared in front of Li Feng again, ready to convey to Sirius Li Feng's intention to trade with the mysterious man, and to tell him the secret that the locket was the Horcrux. Not long after leaving Li Feng's room, Creature appeared in Li Feng's room again with two people in a pin shape. Creature, who had just appeared, hid behind the two people with a wronged look on his face. He obviously understood that he would most likely leave the Black family, and followed Li Feng, who had no idea. Sirius, an old acquaintance, stood in front of Li Feng with a ferocious expression on his face. Needless to say, looking at Sirius's expression, you can tell that he knows about Horcruxes. This is good, so I don't have to waste my saliva to explain. Seeing that Sirius still didn't take out his wand, Li Feng curled his lips slightly. If Sirius took out his wand and pointed it at him, although Li Feng felt that he had the capital to fight one-on-one, there would still be trouble. After all, Sirius was Dumbledore's man, but, you dare to appear in front of me with bare hands. Do you think you can beat me, or because the accomplice next to you who pointed his wand at me from beginning to end can give you courage? But it's really uncomfortable to be pointed at with a magic wand. For safety reasons, Li Feng snapped his fingers and wrapped the room into the mirror space. Once a battle broke out, the mirror space would be Li Feng's home field, so he could at least play a home field advantage. Just as Li Feng was about to speak, he saw Creature standing in front of Sirius with a loyal expression and said, Master, it is this magic that imprisoned us in an alien space. I couldn't teleport away before because I was trapped in this space by him. Sirius pushed Creature away and said with a nonchalant expression, what do you want? Li Feng shrugged and said, time converter and related information. Sirius was stunned at first, then sneered, I really didn't see that you still wanted to get involved in time spells. Forget it, the Ministry of Magic has many time converters, but they only know how to make them, but don't know the operating principles of time magic. Li Feng did not refute Sirius's ridicule, and still smiled and said, and teach me magic. After thinking about it, Li Feng felt that he didn't know much about the magic of this world, and added, teach from the basics. Basics. Didn't this person go to a magic school? No wonder he has so little magic power. Lupin narrowed his eyes, looked Li Feng up and down, and asked curiously, I can teach you basic magic, but you have to explain your origins. Li Feng looked at Lupin, tilted his head and asked, who are you? Remus John Lupin. Lupin said calmly, you can call me Lupin. Werewolf Lupin. Speaking of this, his teaching level is really good, but it seems that I have better conditions to trade with Lupin, how about changing the conditions? After thinking about it, Li Feng grinned and said, it's nice to meet you, Professor Lupin, but I want to change the conditions for you to teach me magic. I will use the condition of expelling or suppressing the wolfsbane toxin in your body in exchange for you teaching me magic. In order to increase persuasiveness, Li Feng took out his wooden box and opened it while speaking, motioning Lupin to check the pseudo-angel feather in the box. Lupin, holding the magic wand, glanced at the white feather. He was a little confused as to why Li Feng called him Professor. At the same time, he didn't know why. When he saw the feather, he felt that his mind was purified, and even if he turned into a werewolf, he would still have reason. At the same time, he was a little scared, as if there was an instinct telling him to stay away from the feather. Of course, it was just Lupin's illusion that he could still have reason after turning into a werewolf. The function of the pseudo-angel feather was indeed to purify creatures with twisted minds. As for whether the creature could withstand the purification energy, this was not within the consideration of the feather. The werewolves in this world could not recognize their relatives when the moon was full, which showed that their minds were twisted. Therefore, for a normal Lupin, the feathers did not have much effect, but when the moon was full, it would still kill Lupin if he was not careful. Frowning, Lupin looked at Li Feng and asked, "What is this?" After closing the wooden box, Li Feng took out a matchbox-sized magic book from his pocket, enlarged the magic book to normal size in front of everyone, and said as he turned the pages, "That is a pseudo-angel feather, a prop that specifically restrains mind-distorted creatures. When we were in Azkaban, we locked the Dementors in the mirror space and subdued them with this feather. If you want to expel wolf poison, the feather can help you." While speaking, Li Feng had already found a spell to restrain werewolves. He handed the magic book to Lupin and pointed at the spell and said, "The effect of the feather is too strong. If you are not careful, you may die. So I still have some spells to suppress wolf poison. As long as you find a way to engrave it on your body, it will be difficult for you to become a werewolf during the full moon. Of course, there will still be weakness. After all, this is to suppress rather than eliminate wolf poison." Lupin looked at the magic book, then at Li Feng, shook his head with a little regret on his face and said, "I don't know how you know I'm a werewolf, but I insist on exchanging the locket, otherwise I would rather endure the pain of wolf poison than teach you magic." "Remus." Sirius looked at Lupin in disbelief and said, "You are not." "Locket," Lupin interrupted Sirius with a smile and said, "Compared to the locket, I think killing the mysterious man can make my heart calmer, and after so many years, I have become accustomed to the pain brought to me by wolf poison." After that, Lupin looked at Li Feng calmly, and said while looking at the mirror space, "Using the sealed space to make the Dementors have nowhere to escape, plus the feathers that restrain the Dementors, it's a good strategy, but you still tell me your origins and hand over the locket. Maybe we can't leave this alien space even if we defeat you, but how can I be willing if I don't try? Are there really people who are not afraid of death? I just want to learn some magic, is it so difficult?" Li Feng looked at Lu Ping with slightly twitching eyelids, trying to see submission in the other person's eyes, but he couldn't see anything except being indifferent to life and death. After a long while, Li Feng shrugged and said, "Exchanging the locket for a time turner, teaching magic, and creature, is there no doubt about it?" Sirius and Lupin looked at each other. They nodded and glanced at Creature, who was bowing his head silently. They had no objections from the beginning about Creature's change of ownership. After all, a house elf couldn't be as mysterious as him. Human Horcruxes are important. As for my origin, it's not impossible to tell you, but it's not that I despise your closed magic world. You must first understand the parallel universe to understand my origin." Seeing the confused expressions on their faces, Li Feng thought, "Sure enough," and at the same time resisted the urge to roll his eyes and explained to them what parallel universes were. When watching the Harry movie, Li Feng only knew that wizards either looked down on muggles or were afraid of muggles, but for this reason, it was too speechless to not even pay attention to some scientific theories. In this regard, Li Feng couldn't help but imagine that hundreds of years have passed in this world, and humans have begun to move into space. This group of wizards went out and took a look. Hey, where are the muggles? Why are there wizards left on the entire Earth? After a long time, Lu Ping took the lead in digesting Li Feng's words and said with a contemptuous tone, "If you just say you are not from this world, it will be over. What are you talking about the universe?" At this time, Sirius also understood Li Feng's origin, and suddenly realized, "No wonder I don't recognize any of your magic. It turns out that you are an alien, and you don't even use a wand to cast spells." Li Feng, "Aliens? Forget it, aliens will be aliens. But you actually know about aliens. This is incredible." Sirius seemed to see Li Feng's surprise, glanced at his mouth and said, "I was a master of modifying motorcycles, and wizards can't make motorcycles. I can only buy them secretly from muggles, and muggles are indispensable among them. I don't know how to deal with melons, so I'm not an old-school wizard." With a little doubt, Sirius continued to ask, "Since you have never been to Earth, how did you know that I was imprisoned in Azkaban?" On the side, Lu Ping, who was analyzing in his mind whether Li Feng's origin was true, answered for Li Feng with a somewhat uncertain tone, time. Sirius was still a little confused. He blinked inexplicably and looked at Lupine and asked, what time? Lupine glanced at Sirius angrily and said, the first thing Austin mentioned when he proposed to exchange the locket was the time turner. I think. Lupine looked at Li Feng and said, I think Austin, sir, you know time magic, right? Seeing Li Feng nodding and admitting that he knew time magic, Lu Ping said with a little envy in his eyes, I guess you can see our past and future from the timeline, right? Why didn't I think it could be explained like this? That's right. I don't want to explain that you are living in a movie plot. Li Feng grinned, nodded slightly and said, I can only see part of it. After all, my magic power is only so much. If I am strong enough, I may be able to see further. Just brag. After all, bragging won't attract taxes. Why shouldn't Li Feng brag so hard? Having said that, such an explanation is also good. At least the two of them will not be asked inexplicably some things that have not been shown in the movie, such as when Harry's parents got married. Then Li Feng can also use magic to I haven't seen it yet to explain. On the side, Sirius, who muttered the words, timeline, seemed to be recalling something, his eyes instantly became bloodshot, and he asked, you said you knew the whereabouts of Peter Pettigrew, weren't you lying to me? Li Feng spread his hands and said, of course. Where is he? Although Sirius tried his best to take deep breaths to calm down, his clenched hands could still tell how frantic he was inside at the moment. Even Lu Ping, who was usually calm next to him, looked at Li Feng longingly. Li Feng, I want it. Sirius, who had had a preliminary understanding of Li Feng, knew from Li Feng's tone that the other party was about to propose a deal again, but now he just wanted to kill Peter Pettigrew and didn't want to quarrel with Li Feng at all. He directly interrupted Li Feng and said, make a deal. Li Feng, did I say anything just now? How did you close the deal? Lupine looked at Sirius speechlessly, who was overwhelmed by hatred. He pulled him behind him to calm down, then turned around and said, what do you want to exchange for information? Knowledge, Li Feng said with a smile, a lot of knowledge. You also know that I am not from the magic world. I am full of curiosity about the magic in your world, so I want a lot of magic knowledge. Some simple or basic magic books can still be bought in bookstores, but there is no place to buy some precious magic books, so what he wants is the magic books collected by the Black family. Sirius hesitated for a moment and said, I can lend you the books to copy, but I want to keep the originals. These books are my gift to Harry. Li Feng, deal. When the agreement was reached, Li Feng said cheerfully, Peter Pettigrew is at Hogwarts. Impossible, Lupine retorted without thinking. If Peter is at Hogwarts, it is impossible for Dumbledore to not know about it. Sirius also didn't believe Li Feng's words. He looked at Li Feng with evil eyes and said, the lie you made up is too bad, or do you think I have been tortured by the Dementors and become a fool, so you can deceive me by just making up a lie? Li Feng sighed and said, have you forgotten what Peter Pettigrew's anima is about? After thinking about it, Li Feng said that he really didn't remember what the ultimate transformation spell in Harry's world was called, and said, it's your transformation spell. Peter can turn into a field mouse. Do you think Dumbledore will notice that there is an extra one in the school? A field mouse. Animagus, Lupine said thoughtfully. In addition, Peter is familiar with all the secret passages in the school. Maybe Dumbledore really can't find Peter's trace easily. Likewise, even if we find a reason to enter the school, there is no trace of a mouse. After all, the school is too big. Sirius didn't believe Li Feng's words, so he said softly, what's the difference between you telling me this information and not telling it? I still need to use the precious magic of the Black family. Unless you find Peter Pettigrew, the deal will be cancelled. It's not impossible for me to go to school to find Pettigrew, but there is a basilisk in Hogwarts now. Isn't there a little bit of code to copy books? Li Feng scratched his brows and said, Pettigrew is Ron Weasley's pet now, a pet rat with a missing finger. It is said that Pettigrew is indeed a graduate of Gryffindor College. He turned into a field mouse and died. The Weasley family has been hiding for 12 years, and no one has the courage and perseverance. Anyway, I can't turn myself into a mouse, and I have to do it for 12 years. Quote, Ron Weasley has been missing fingers for 12 years. Li Feng's introduction to Pettigrew made the two of them believe that Pettigrew was at school. At the same time, the two suddenly realized something. After looking at each other, they both said in unison, Harry is at school, he is in danger. Sirius, who looked panicked, bared his teeth and said, let's go to the school immediately. You protect Harry, and I'll kill Peter. Lupin, who was calmer, grabbed Sirius, looked at Li Feng and asked, did you see Peter hurt Harry? Afraid that Li Feng didn't know who Harry was, Lupin added, Harry has a lightning bolt on his forehead. A little boy with a scar and a second-year student at Hogwarts. Of course I know Harry. After all, that guy is the protagonist. Li Feng shook his head slightly to indicate that Harry was safe. He looked at Sirius and said, if you kill Peter like this, how will your charges be cleared like this? Why don't we discuss how to capture him alive and hand him over to the Ministry of Magic in exchange for you? Freedom of. Lupin, who had the same idea, nodded and said, when you are free, in addition to wandering around the streets, you can also buy a handy wand, which will better protect your life safety. Li Feng scratched his head in confusion. He remembered that everyone in the movie had a wand. Even the wanted criminal Sirius had a wand with him. Why did Lu Ping think that a wand could not be bought just by buying it? Excuse me, do you have any other requirements for purchasing a wand? Of course, Lu Ping was stunned for a moment. Isn't this common sense that everyone knows? Then he thought that Li Feng was not a local and did not know these common sense, so he casually explained to Li Feng, only innocent people can buy wands. Wanted criminals like Sirius cannot buy wands. After some explanation, Li Feng nodded speechlessly to express his understanding. This is like even in a country where people can legally hold guns, there are still strict regulations on the purchase of guns. You can only buy civilian firearms and cannot sell automatic rifles. Wait, the ultimate goal is to prevent criminals from easily obtaining powerful weapons. For wizards, wands are no longer just civilian firearms. They are deadly weapons in the hands of wizards, so it is necessary to strictly control the wands sold. Just like this, Li Feng, who had no documents on his body, was very depressed. Although he was not a wanted criminal, he also had no ID card to prove his innocence. The most important thing was that he could not find him because he was unfamiliar with the place. Ways to create documents. After scratching his head with a slight headache, Li Feng recalled what Sirius had said before, and Shanshan said, you said before that you could get the certificate, so feel free to help me get the certificate too. Sirius grinned and said faintly, what do you want in exchange? These words sound familiar to Maiden, isn't this what I said to you? Li Feng looked at Lu Ping speechlessly and said, I will use the spell to suppress Wolfsbane in exchange for a legal certificate and materials for modifying the car. After thinking about it, Li Feng felt that he was at a bit of a disadvantage. After all, there is no spell in this world that can suppress wolf poison. This is considered a only scorpion shit poison. He added, I still need a sum of gold galleons. Lu Ping looked down at his patched clothes and said with a twitching corner of his mouth, how did you see that I have money to buy materials? Seeing Li Feng's embarrassment, Sirius felt as happy as jumping into the pool on a hot summer day. Just because you talk about deals at all times, just because Lupin doesn't have money doesn't mean that I don't have money. Sirius, who owned the entire Black family property, waved his hand like a rich man and said while looking at the magic book in Li Feng's hand, deal, the certificate will be delivered to you tomorrow morning. Li Feng said that he immediately understood the other person's eyes, opened the magic book and handed it to Lu Ping, pointed to the spells on the page and said, there are actually quite a few spells that can restrain Wolfsbane. If you are not satisfied with the spells I gave you, you can find the appropriate spell to suppress Wolfsbane in the book. After Lupin said, thank you, to Sirius, he took the magic book and walked to the desk. He picked up the quill on the table and copied the spells. Come and work on the spell. Sirius on the side nodded, indicating that Pettigrew's matter is indeed more important now. After all, it is related to Harry's safety. Although the certificate will be given to you tomorrow, it will take some time to collect the materials for modifying the car, and I will confirm that these spells are indeed effective. On the premise that the materials are handed over to you, as for the gold galleons, they are lying in the basement before, and you want to get them yourself. Quote. After Lupin copied the spell, he signaled Li Feng to open the gap in the mirror space. He hurriedly returned to the Black Mansion with Sirius, waiting for Dumbledore to return so they could discuss how to find Peter and clear Sirius's name. In the room, Creature stood quietly behind Li Feng, while Li Feng stood by the windowsill and watched the two people leave the Broken Axe bar, opening the portal to the Black family basement with an anxious look on his face. He wanted to empty out the gold galleons in the basement before Sirius returned to the old house. This was the cost of buying magic materials, and he didn't listen to what Sirius said. If you want it, just get it yourself, so he was. You can't blame me if I emptied it. Creature stepped through the portal with a look of confusion and surprise, and respectfully said to Li Feng, Master, what do you want to do when you return to the Black family? In the future, you will change your name to Boss. If someone in other worlds hears you calling me Master, it will cause unnecessary trouble. After speaking, Li Feng pointed at Jin Zilong in the cubicle and said, Put this Jin Zilong here. Longdu moved into my room. Creature looked at Jin Gallon, then at the portal behind him, nodded and said, Okay boss. While Creature was busy carrying the gold galleons, Li Feng walked to another compartment, looked at the books on the bookshelf with greedy eyes, and asked, Creature, are these books protected by magic? Creature turned to look at the books and said, The books on the bookshelf are not protected by magic, but some books themselves are purely dangerous, such as the Adventures in Illusion, in the first row. A wizard who is not strong enough will fall into an illusion after just one glance, spends his life in books and eventually dies in an illusion. Only a powerful wizard can decipher the illusions in the books, and such books are everywhere on the bookshelves. Li Feng, who is self-aware, does not think that he has great strength. It would be funny if he was unlucky enough to be killed by a book. After thinking about it, Li Feng looked at Creature and said, What if you help me copy and translate these books? You deal with the magic in the book? Creature nodded, looked at the bookshelf and said, I can ignore some magic, but only some, and I also need the help of a special translation quill, otherwise I will not be able to complete the task of translating so many books in a short time. Quote. After looking at the empty gin gallon, Li Feng took out the magic book and handed it to Creature, saying, Help me translate some now. We will leave the basement when Sirius comes back. Yes, boss. After saying that, Creature's old habit relapsed. He walked to the bookshelf and picked up a magic book, muttering in a low voice, Boss. Not counting the Black family's golden galleons. I still want to get my hands on the precious magic book. Li Feng scratched his eyebrows. Currently, he was unable to cure Creature's problem, but that didn't mean he wouldn't have a chance in the future. This was also the reason why he dared to ask for Creature. Otherwise, Li Feng's brain would be damaged by an elf who was always scolding him in his ears. You will only ask for it if you pass it. Ignoring Creature's muttering, Li Feng seemed to be talking to himself or asking Creature, Is there any way to improve my strength? Creature first glanced at Li Feng, who had little magic power, with disdain, then remembered that Li Feng was now his master, lowered his head and said, Boss, you can buy a magic power increasing potion. This potion can increase your total magic power, but the potions are very rare and precious, and they are hard to come by. Quote. Or you can go to Hogwarts to practice for a while, but the problem is that the school has strict security, and I'm afraid you won't be able to get in with your strength. I can understand the magic power enhancement potion. After all, there are many stories in novels and movies about drinking potions to increase the upper limit of magic power. Li Feng frowned and said, But what does it mean to go to Hogwarts to practice? What's special about Hogwarts? Quote. After Creature's explanation, Li Feng slapped his forehead in annoyance. Reality is reality, and movies are movies. Although I have reminded myself that this is the real world, I still subconsciously forget many things that are not told in the movie. Like Hogwarts, the movie only tells that every wizard will go to school, but why do those families with rich family backgrounds and many resources still insist that their children go to Hogwarts to go to school? Isn't it good to hire some private professors at home to give children an elite education? It's not that they can't afford it. In fact, there is an environmental problem here. The environment here does not mean that the family is afraid that the child will be lonely, causing loneliness when they grow up, but the geographical environment of Hogwarts is too good. First of all, the school's feng shui is too good. There are a large number of magical creatures living in the Forbidden Forest with a slightly lower concentration, and there are as many magical plants on the ground as weeds on the roadside. As for Hogwarts, which is built in the area with the highest magic concentration, its magic concentration is unknown how many times higher than the outside world. Originally, this was nothing. After all, many wealthy families have magic arrays that gather magic power, making the magic power in the family more concentrated, and the offspring have better magic talents at birth. But you can't resist the 4 people who founded Hogwarts School. They not only chose a good school site, but also built a super magic array for the school. After thousands of years of operation of these magic arrays, how concentrated is the magic power in the school? Look at those stairs that like to move around in front of the Gryffindor dormitory. No one maintains the magic power for these stairs. Where does the magic power come from after moving for 100 years? It's provided by the school. High concentration is not enough. The magic power converted by the magic array is also easy to be absorbed by people, just like the school's freshmen or 11-year-old little brats. How can the magic power be absorbed and converted by the freshmen? The position of defense against the dark arts professor coveted by the mysterious man is the same. Isn't it because he wants to stay in school to enjoy the joy of soaring strength? Otherwise, a curse on a professorship can still be a powerful curse that can last for decades. Is he too idle? Isn't it because he can't get it and doesn't let others get it? As for cursing other professors' positions, let's look at the strength of the teachers in the school. Let's not talk about Dumbledore. Which of the 4 college bosses is easy to mess with? If the you-know-who wants to curse, he must have the ability. If it is the later you-know-who, he may be able to do it, but the previous you-know-who, he can't be messed with. And Dumbledore finds a professor of defense against the dark arts every year. How many wizards are there in the whole UK? At the rate of changing a professor every year, plus the wizard's fear of you-know-who, no one will be willing to be a professor of defense against the dark arts in a few years. The reason why the school can find professors every year is because the school environment is too good. As long as you stay in school, you can improve your own strength. Even if you can only stay for 1 year, it's good. If it weren't for the fear of you-know-who, it is estimated that these guest professors every year would fight for the position of professor. After a long time, Li Feng smacked his lips and muttered to himself in silence, "This is really a plan that is not as good as change. After talking for a long time, I don't want to participate in the plot. I still have to go to school. Basilisk, Basilisk, when did you die?" Creature, who was really busy copying books, suddenly put down the books in his hand, looked up at the ceiling, and said, "Boss, Sirius is back." Back. Li Feng waved his hand, put away the magic book and said, "Then leave, and come back to copy next time when you buy all the props." The next morning, Li Feng, who was still asleep, smelled the sweet smell of butter bread. Li Feng, who had to work hard to open his eyelids, heard Creature say before he got up, "Boss, I don't know what you like to eat, I made bread and milk for you personally. If you don't like it, I will change it immediately." Li Feng waved his hand. As for food, Li Feng, who was used to wandering, said that he was not picky about food. As long as it was edible, it was fine. I didn't see what he ate before, compressed biscuits, canned food. After washing up, Li Feng bit the bread and drank a glass of milk. It must be said that Creature's craftsmanship is really good. The bread is soft and delicious. Thinking that he will taste Creature's craftsmanship in the future, Li Feng said that it is worth it to exchange for Creature. Taking advantage of the meal time, Li Feng turned his head and looked at the room full of gold galleons, frowned and said, "Creature, please buy me a suitcase with enough space before going out. As for the cost, you can pay it yourself." When Li Feng was burping, Creature came to Li Feng with a package and a suitcase as tall as a person. "Boss, this is the package Sirius gave you." Li Feng took the package and opened it, and looked at the certificate in the package. This is a temporary certificate issued by the Ministry of Magic, which tells that Li Feng is a wizard who is traveling, but his luggage was stolen unlucky, and he applied for a temporary certificate in the Ministry of Magic to avoid unnecessary trouble. As for the authenticity of this certificate, Li Feng said that he could not tell, but for Li Feng who wanted to buy magic wands and other magical items, this certificate was enough. After putting the documents away, Li Feng looked at the suitcase in front of him speechlessly. It was called a suitcase, but in Li Feng's eyes it was not a suitcase at all, it was simply an upright coffin. Look at the way the suitcase was opened, it was opened like the lid of a coffin after it was erected upright. The only consolation was that the space inside the suitcase was indeed large enough, and it was estimated that after installing 2 basketball hoops, it could be used to play a basketball game. After ordering Creature to pack the galleons into the suitcase, Li Feng, who was in a good mood, whistled and pushed open the door. He had been planning for today's purchase for a long time. Originally, Li Feng planned to replace all the galleons with materials today. If the plan hadn't changed and he now had to find an opportunity to sneak into Hogwarts to practice and postpone his return to the Marvel world, he would really buy whatever he wanted. Led by the familiar Creature, Li Feng walked to the trash can in the back alley of the Broken Axe bar. With a look, Creature knocked the bricks on the trash can to open the entrance to Diagon Alley. Creature, do you know which shop can make custom-made clothes? Li Feng, who was tired of going into battle every time he traveled through time, lowered his head and asked, including underwear and socks, and some that can enchant clothes. Creature said without thinking. Tufin Clothing Store, there are clothes required by the boss, but enchanting is a slow job and takes time to complete. Li Feng nodded and motioned for Creature to lead the way. After a while, Li Feng, who walked into the clothing store, looked at the clothes hanging on the wall and said, "Boss, how long will it take you to customize the enchanted clothes?" The boss looked at Li Feng and then at the house elf following Li Feng. He knew that no one who could have a house elf follow him and serve him was short of money. The boss smiled and said, "It depends on what magic you need." Li Feng, who had already thought about this, said, "Automatic cleaning and deformation, but I want 4 sets, 1 set each for spring, summer, autumn and winter, including socks and underwear." Automatic cleaning is easy to understand. It's just that Li Feng is too lazy to wash clothes. The ability to change clothes is because Li Feng considered that he can integrate into the local environment faster after time travel. Otherwise, you ask Li Feng to make some suits and then travel to the timeline. Medieval world, people will know you are an alien right away. The boss was a little confused. He heard the request to enchant underwear and panties at the same time. What was the operation of enchanting socks? But who is the rich man? Since the customer makes a request, of course he will try his best to satisfy it. Anyway, he can make money without biting anyone. The boss thought for a while, estimated the time needed, and said, 3 days, but if you pay more, I will finish it before dark. As Li Feng, who emptied the basement of the Black family, said that he was not short of money. As long as he got the items he needed, a small amount of money that he would not take with him in life or death was not worth mentioning. After being measured by the boss, Li Feng graciously paid the full fee before even seeing the clothes. As soon as he walked out of the shop, Li Feng couldn't wait to signal Creature to take him to buy a wand. Ollivander's Wand Shop. The owner Ollivander is the best wand caster in the world. Many foreigners come to London specifically just to buy a wand made by him instead of buying it locally. At the same time, all Hogwarts sold all the wands used by his students. What impressed Li Feng most about Ollivander in the movie was his extraordinary memory. Even though this guy was old and could only chew tofu, he could remember all the wands and holders that had been sold. Li Feng walked to the door of Ollivander's store and looked up at the peeling gold-lettered signboard on the door. Ollivander's has been making exquisite wands since 382 BC. This is an old store with historical charm. Shop. When Li Feng walked into the store, his first impression of Ollivander's was that it was dusty. At the same time, there were so many wand boxes piled up to the ceiling. Li Feng estimated that Ollivander usually made wands for fun, otherwise where would he have gotten so many wands? At the counter, Ollivander, a man with gray hair, looked at the unfamiliar Li Feng with a pair of silver-white eyes, and asked with a smile, "This unfamiliar gentleman, welcome to Ollivander's wand store. If you are here to buy a wand, please show your ID." Li Feng smiled and took out his identity certificate, which he didn't know was authentic, and said, "Apart from the fact that the suitcase was too big and was not stolen, my ID and wand were stolen by muggles. This is a temporary ID I applied for at the Ministry of Magic. I hope this will allow me to buy a good wand from you." "It's the wand that chooses its owner," Ollivander said while taking the ID and checking it, not forgetting to correct Li Feng's concept. "So it's not that you think the wand is taking advantage of you, but that after the wand chooses you, it will naturally make you feel satisfied." After a while, Ollivander handed the ID back to Li Feng and at the same time looked Li Feng up and down and asked, "Mr. Austin, which hand do you prefer to use the wand with?" Li Feng shook his right hand and said, "I'm used to using this hand. By the way, I still need to maintain the items for the wand." A wizard who knows how to cherish his wand, Ollivander turned to the goods shelf, picked up a measuring tape and said, I am very happy that another wand is about to find its owner. Taking a tape measure to measure Li Feng's arm length, height, head circumference and other dimensions, Ollivander turned around and took out a wand box and handed it to Li Feng and said, try it. Li Feng looked at the shiny black wand. His first impression was that it was too ugly. But who told Ollivander to insist on choosing the owner of the wand? Li Feng could only hold his nose and pick up the wand. But before Li Feng tried to wave the wand, Ollivander snatched the wand and whispered, this is wrong, please wait a moment. After saying that, Ollivander put down his wand and turned around to pick another wand. Li Feng felt a little confused. You know it's not suitable even if I haven't even tried it. Soon, Ollivander walked up to Li Feng with a second wand. Li Feng, who took the wand, did not wave it in a hurry, but waited for Ollivander to say, inappropriate, or, suitable. After all, he is a master who can tell whether the wand is suitable for you without you trying to wave it. Ollivander looked at Li Feng speechlessly and said, Mr. Austin, don't you give it a try. Now you want me to try again. Li Feng curled his lips slightly, gently waved the wand in his hand and released the fire summoning technique. This time, Li Feng clearly felt that his magic power was being pulled by the wand, gathering at the top of the wand and releasing a huge flame. Li Feng swore that at first he only wanted to summon a small flame for cigarette lighting, but he really didn't want to summon a fire that almost reached the ceiling. Li Feng hurriedly put down his wand, looked up at the slightly blackened ceiling, and said apologetically, sorry, I will compensate. Ollivander shook his head slightly, raised the wand in his hand and cast, restore to original, on the ceiling, and said, it doesn't matter, I think I know which wand you should use. After speaking, Ollivander pulled out a wand box from the corner of the counter and said, the making of this wand was somewhat unexpected. I thought it would be difficult to find an owner for it. As he spoke, Ollivander opened the box, handed a light gray wand with dark gray patterns to Li Feng, and said, the wood of the wand is sycamore wood, and the core of the wand is the fetal hair of the thestral. Li Feng said that Wutongmu knew about it, but he had never heard of Yechi or anything like that. Is it important that the core of the staff is just that? As long as it suits him, Li Feng doesn't mind even if the core of the stick is a fly's leg hair. With a wave of the wand, Li Feng released the fire summoning technique at once, and saw a ball of orange-red flame the size of a dove egg, floating steadily on the top of the wand, and followed Li Feng's command to move here. Li Feng extinguished the flame with satisfaction and said sincerely to Ollivander, thank you. With a slightly complicated expression, Ollivander took out the wand maintenance tool for Li Feng and said, after the trees are cut down, the wood will still survive for a period of time, just like grafted plants. Only active branches can be grafted successfully. The wood needed to make a wand must be alive, or the wand wood must be active. But your wand is different. It lost its activity the second before I placed the core of the wand. It can be said that it is dead, of sycamore wood. It is said in the legend that a phoenix does not live in a phoenix tree. In the eyes of some people, the phoenix tree and the phoenix have the same meaning of being reborn from the ashes. But your stick, which originally represented life, now represents death, and... Ollivander paused for a moment, handed Li Feng the props for maintaining the wand, and continued, Thestrals are very unlucky creatures in the eyes of some people, thinking that they will bring terrible disasters to those who see them. In fact, this kind of creature can only be seen by those who have witnessed death with their own eyes, but this does not prevent them from representing death when they become adults. But the heart of your staff, it is the fetal hair of the thestral when it is just born, which represents a life coming into this world. Quote, the most important thing is that when I thought the wand had failed and put the center of the wand into the wood without giving up, the two perfectly blended together. Li Feng listened to Ollivander's incomprehensible remarks, scratched his eyebrows and said, the wood of the staff that originally represented life now represents death, and the heart of the staff that originally represented death now represents life. Ollivander nodded and said with some confusion, I am very curious about what kind of person Mr. Austin is, and why a wand that reverses life and death would choose you. I also want to know why. Apart from the fact that it feels good in the hand, I can't see how the wand chooses its owner. Li Feng bowed slightly and said, maybe it's because I like taking risks and am used to seeing life and death. Adventure. Li Feng's words were like a key that opened Ollivander's memories, and he said with some nostalgic thoughts, I also thought about taking risks when I was young, but later I felt that becoming a wand maker would be more suitable for me. Maybe I will travel everywhere after I retire in a few years. It's just travel. After all, I can't afford to take risks as an old person. Li Feng signaled Creature to pay and said, I think it's best for you to be a wand maker. Otherwise, how could I get such a good wand? It's hard to find such a good wand maker. Thank you for the compliment. Ollivander took the gold galleons and smiled. It is my duty to find the owner of the wand. Goodbye, Mr. Austin. After leaving Ollivander's wand shop, Li Feng ran non-stop to Flourishes and Blott's bookstore. Poor Creature followed Li Feng pushing a suitcase that was much taller than him. From a distance, it looks like a huge suitcase moving on its own. Flourish and Blott bookstore mainly sells elementary wizard books. Isn't it the elementary books that Li Feng lacks? So when Li Feng entered the bookstore, he didn't even look at the price list. He held up his hands and said proudly, Give me a set of textbooks for all ages at Hogwarts, including textbooks from previous years. The clerk was a little confused. He glanced at Creature and the huge suitcase behind Li Feng, and said with an uncertain tone, Sir, are you sure it includes books from previous years? Li Feng nodded. In fact, Li Feng felt quite helpless. Ordinary textbooks were fine. Generally, one book would be enough to use Hogwarts for several years. However, Hogwarts changes its Defense Against the Dark Arts professor every year, so the Defense Against the Dark Arts textbook is not systematic at all. Whichever wizard as the professor has always designated the textbook. For example, the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor at Hogwarts this year is Gilderoy Lockhart, which caused the clerk to take out a thick stack of textbooks written by Gilderoy Lockhart himself. Li Feng was quite impressed by Gilderoy Lockhart, who was good at memory magic. Although this professor had no real ability, he was very talkative and good at memory magic. He was the first person to be able to teach in Hogwarts. This is the professor who cheated me into eating and drinking. Li Feng just looked at the books, Breaking with the Female Ghost, and other books with twitching eyes. Ma Dan, female ghost. I'm not afraid of devils, why should I be afraid of female ghosts? After talking about female ghosts, what is there to be afraid of? She has long, straight and flowing hair, cute big eyes, and a graceful figure. The most important thing is that the female ghost's skin is very white. Otherwise, if you imagine a fat female ghost with messy hair, mung bean eyes, less than 1 meter tall but 200 centimeters waist, and a skin color like black briquettes floats in front of you, you will never be scared. If you die, you will only be laughed to death, right? Is this a female ghost? He's just an unlucky guy who was just struck by lightning. While complaining about the book written by Gilderoy Lockhart, Li Feng picked up the next one and saw that it was Traveling with Ghouls, Traveling with Vampires and Wandering with Werewolves. Li Feng casually explained these to himself. Put the useless book aside. Although my gold galleons are about the same as those brought by the strong wind, I can't waste them casually. What about ghouls and vampires? A copy of Solomon's Key gives me many ways to deal with these creatures, to make the other party doubt their life. After a long time, the clerk felt that he was almost tired and fell down before he moved all the books into Li Feng's suitcase. Li Feng glanced at the gold galleons in the suitcase, waved to Creature and said, Remember to remind me to leave some living expenses, and the rest will be used to buy some materials. There are bits and pieces of magical props such as crucibles for boiling potions, luxury tents that can be retracted without leaving a mark, quills for translation, etc. Li Feng only chooses the expensive ones and not the right ones. These props are related to Lupine's subtle operations in teaching magic in the future. Li Feng does not dare to be careless. As for the tent, of course, Li Feng will use it after sneaking into Hogwarts through the secret passage. After that, Li Feng went on a spree to buy some potions and medicinal materials. If not for the fact that Jin Gallon was about to bottom out, Li Feng would have planned to empty out all the materials in the medicinal materials store. Finally, Li Feng walked into the Ila Owl store, under the leadership of Creature. Originally, the owl was not on Li Feng's shopping list, but he couldn't stand it and Li Feng stayed in this world as long as possible in order to improve his strength. Considering that he was going to hide in Hogwarts, and he had to learn magic from Lupine during the day, and there were no communication methods such as telephones in the wizarding world, Li Feng had to buy an owl as a correspondent. As for how he suddenly appeared in front of Lupine in Hogwarts where apparition is prohibited, Li Feng didn't even bother to think about it. Knowing that Kamatage's portal can be opened across dimensions, Li Feng was still afraid that he would not be able to get out of Hogwarts. Now, the only trouble is that Li Feng hasn't thought of the hiding place yet. Originally, the basilisk's lair was pretty good. The place was wide and hidden, but it is not yet known whether the basilisk has been killed. Li Feng can only exclude the basilisk's lair from the options. When Harry is on summer vacation, he will settle down in the basilisk's lair. Walking into the dark owl store, Li Feng knew that the store was dimly lit to match the owl's habit of sleeping during the day and emerging at night, but what did it mean that it was so dark that he couldn't even see what the owl looked like? Is it necessary to be so dark? Smelling the smell of bird droppings around him, Li Feng covered his mouth and nose and hurriedly bought an owl with big-eared bat blood and gray-yellow feathers, then turned and left the store. Li Feng walked out of the store and took a deep breath. While feeling the fresh air, he looked curiously at the owl he bought and asked Creature, bats and owls are not the same species. How did they crossbreed to create this owl? Critchello replied speechlessly. Boss, just use the enchanting potion on the owl. Ordinary owls don't have the ability to send messages. Only after using the enchanting potion can they become messengers. Looking at the few gold galleons left in the suitcase, Li Feng looked at the piles of various magic materials in the suitcase with relief. The gold galleons brought back to the Marvel world are just a kind of material, it is better to replace them with supplies. I said that the golden galleons were not mine in the first place, so it feels really good to spend them. After thinking about what he had not forgotten to buy, Li Feng signaled Creature to go back to the Broken Axe bar first, while he took a small amount of gold galleons and prepared to wander down Diagon Alley. If Li Feng had enough strength, then it would be good to wander around Nocturne Alley to find some black magic items, but now, Li Feng, who had just left the ranks of rookies, said that he would rather look at the Fatian sweeper to satisfy his curiosity. As for buying one, Li Feng thought it was better to forget about the flying broom, because it was unnecessary and not cost-effective. He really had no interest in riding a broom flying around in a world full of radars. What if someone shot him down? And if you fly in the sky without wearing thick antifreeze clothing, you may be too cold to be humane. As evening approached, Li Feng tasted food cooked with magic in Diagon Alley. He tasted a few bites with a look of disgust on his face and then got up and returned to the leaky cauldron. Creature's cooking was still delicious. As soon as Li Feng returned to the room, Creature diligently took out 4 sets of brand new clothes and said, Boss, the owner of Tuolfin clothing store has sent you customized clothes. Do you want to try them on? Of course, but before I try it on, Li Feng said as he took off his coat, I'm so sweaty after walking around Diagon Alley all day. Creature, prepare some hot water for me. I want to take a bath. Creature was busy preparing hot water and a bathtub. After Li Feng soaked comfortably in the bathtub, he immediately transformed into a bather and rubbed Li Feng up and down. After a long time, Li Feng, who was clean, put on some fitting clothes and looked at himself in the mirror. On the side, Creature looked up at Li Feng and asked curiously, Boss, why did you buy 4 sets of clothes? Can't you just buy 2 sets of clothes with constant temperature magic? Li Feng's eyes twitched slightly and he looked down at Creature. Couldn't you have told me earlier that I forgot? Save money on 2 sets of clothes and allow me to buy more medicinal materials. In the evening, while Li Feng was still soaking in the bathtub, Dumbledore returned to the Black Mansion from Azkaban, dusty and tired. After Dumbledore rang the doorbell, Lupin opened the door, stepped aside to let Dumbledore enter the old house, and asked, Professor, how did you check it out? Dumbledore shook his head slightly and said, Austin's method of controlling the Dementors is more troublesome than I thought. I only know that it is a kind of black magic, and the Dementors are not Austin's pets. He is a slave whose life and death are controlled by Austin. As for breaking the curse, I don't have any ideas yet. Maybe I need to talk to some old friends, or ask Austin directly. Quote. As he spoke, Dumbledore turned to the restaurant and saw Sirius with a depressed expression in front of the table. He ignored the charred food on the table and just poured wine into his mouth. He blinked and asked Lupin beside him, what's wrong with him? Lupin sighed and said, we were in a bad mood, and when Creature was still in the old house, we didn't feel his importance. But after losing Creature, we discovered that we couldn't even cook the most basic food. If I can't do it well, maybe I should find some time to learn how to cook. Creature. Dumbledore fiddled with the unknown food on the table. Hungry, he immediately put his appetite behind and said, food can make people happy. I like to taste some pudding when I am in a bad mood. What happened to the house elf? Sirius set him free. Sirius, who was slightly drunk, looked at Dumbledore with a wry smile and said, I gave him away. Dumbledore was stunned. He knew what a house elf meant to these historic families. It could be said that the absence of house elves meant that the Black family was completely lonely. Dumbledore pulled out a chair and asked curiously, it seems that a lot of things happened while I was away. Lupin leaned his back against the wall and said with a bitter look on his face, there are many, more than you can imagine. Not only do we know that the locket that Austin took is one of the mysterious man's Horcruxes, we also know that Peter Pettigrew became the adult pets hiding in Hogwarts. With a surprised expression, Dumbledore motioned to Lupin to describe the incident in detail. After listening to Lupin's story, Dumbledore, who thought for a long time, asked, are you sure that Austin is not from this world? Lupin shook his head and said, it is precisely because we don't know whether it is true or not that I circulated Austin's portrait among my friends, but no one has claimed to know Austin or even claimed to have seen Austin. No one from Austin, we guess Austin is telling the truth, and... Lupin glanced at the slightly deserted Sirius and said, after we learned about Pettigrew's whereabouts, we specially investigated the Weasley family vole with Sirius. Although we didn't see the shadow of the vole, we also learned that the vole was alive. It's not normal for an ordinary vole to live for 12 years even if it uses magic medicine, and it's a vole that just happens to be missing a finger. On the side, Sirius took a deep gulp of wine and said, if Lupin hadn't tried so hard to stop me, I would have really wanted to sneak into the school and kill Pettigrew right now. Dumbledore looked at Lupin with a smile and said, you did a good job. As far as I know, Mr. Ron Weasley does have a vole as a pet, but I have never suspected that there is something wrong with that vole. The most important thing is Ron is still in the same dormitory as Harry. Upon hearing that Peter Pettigrew and Harry lived in the same dormitory, Sirius immediately thought that Harry was in danger, stood up with a frightened face and said, no, I'm going to Hogwarts now. Lupin quickly walked up to Sirius who was in a panic, pushed Sirius back into the chair vigorously, and said, calm down, you need to calm down, don't you understand what the professor means? Ron and Harry are in the same room, the Academy has even been in the same dormitory for more than a year. Peter obviously knows about Harry's existence, but he has never harmed Harry, so we do not rule out that the mysterious man asked Pettigrew to monitor Harry until the mysterious man regained his strength. Harry takes action, but until then, Harry is safe. Seeing Sirius struggling fiercely and still wanting to go to Hogwarts to kill Pettigrew, Lupin said almost in a roaring voice, but once your figure appears in the school, it will be different. In addition to attracting the attention of the Ministry of Magic and causing in addition to causing trouble, you will also alarm Pettigrew, who was originally peaceful. You are clearly telling him that you escaped from Azkaban and killed him. Perhaps in desperation, your appearance will force Pettigrew to hurt Harry. Quote. Lupin's roar finally allowed Sirius to regain some sense. At the same time, he also understood that as a wanted criminal, he really could not appear in front of the public easily. Otherwise, it would not be a matter of whether he could kill Pettigrew for revenge, but whether Harry's life would be safe. The problem is that Harry is the only child of Sirius's good friend James, and he doesn't want the Potter family to become extinct because of his impulsiveness. When Lupin let go of the big hand on his shoulder, Sirius picked up the bottle of wine on the table and drank a few sips, hoping to quench the anxiety in his heart, or simply get drunk so that his brain could have some clarity. A short rest, but unfortunately the alcohol content of these wines obviously did not meet Sirius's wishes. Sirius, who was a little helpless and entangled, put down the bottle, looked at Dumbledore and said, Professor, what should I do? We don't know anything at the moment. The only way to ensure Harry's safety is to do nothing. After saying that, Dumbledore looked at Lupin and said, can you help me arrange a meeting with Mr. Austin? Since he claims to be able to see many things we don't understand through time, and I think I can ask him about many of my doubts, such as how many Horcruxes the mysterious man has and where they are hidden. This is not a good idea, Lupin rubbed his eyebrows and said, Austin likes trading. If you want to know the answer from him, you'd better bring enough gold galleons. And this, Sirius stood up and handed the time turner and a piece of information in his pocket to Dumbledore, and said, I stole this from the Ministry of Magic today. Austin specified the exchange of the locket. You can only use the time turner and information, and let Lupine teach Austin magic. Lupine spread his hands and said, I don't care, I just want to spend some time, and Austin asked to teach basic knowledge, which is not difficult for me. I am only worried about whether stealing the time turner will cause trouble to the Ministry of Magic's attention. I think the Ministry of Magic has no time to deal with thieves now, Dumbledore said with a clearly worried expression on his face, subconsciously stroking his white beard that reached his waist. They have learned about Hogwarts. A student was attacked by a monster. We are currently busy negotiating with the school director to shut down Hogwarts if necessary to prevent students from being attacked again. Lupine touched his chin and said thoughtfully, maybe we can ask Austin. See if he knows the true identity of the monster. As long as we know the specific origin of the monster, we can always think of a plan to deal with it. Isn't it? Good idea, Dumbledore said with a smile. I can't wait to meet this false prophet. Lupin, please get in touch with him as soon as possible. Lupine nodded, picked up a piece of paper and pen to write, then walked out of the old house with the letter and said to Dumbledore, on the pretext of trading the locket tonight, I asked him to come to the old house to trade. I hope he came into our world with good intentions, otherwise, Dumbledore shook his head slightly and said, if Austin only comes to our world with the purpose of learning, I don't mind teaching him for a while and checking his character. Then, Dumbledore winked playfully. Blinking, you said, if he is evil, Merlin will forgive my decision. After all, I am already an old man and I really don't have the energy to deal with the next mysterious person. Although there was no murderous intention in Dumbledore's words, Lupine already knew that Dumbledore, who was a white wizard and opposed to killing, sometimes also used killing methods. When Li Feng was still complaining about creatures' clothes, he was puzzled when he saw an owl with a certain sign, holding a letter in its mouth, parked outside the window of his room, and politely tapped the window with its beak. Creature now knew that Li Feng was not from this world. Li Feng probably didn't know what the symbol on the owl meant, so he reminded him in a low voice, Boss, the symbol on the owl is from the post office, and it is here to deliver letters to you. Li Feng scratched his eyebrows, a little surprised, and guessed, I know Sirius and Lupine in this world. Could it be that they got the time converter and data so quickly? It's so fast. Creature opened the window, took the letter and fed some food crumbs to the owl. Perhaps the owl at the post office was well trained and just glanced at the food in Creature's hand before waving its wings and flying away from the leaky cauldron. However, the owl's behavior of refusing food also made Creature say with certainty, Boss, the owls are indeed bred by the post office. Only their owls will refuse to be fed by people other than the breeders. He looked at the envelope and it said, Lupin. Creature handed the letter to Li Feng and said, Boss, your guess is correct. This is a letter from the dirty werewolf Lupine. After receiving the letter, Li Feng felt that it was amazing to get used to this thing. In just one day, he felt that he had become accustomed to Creature talking nonsense all day long. Li Feng ignored Creature, who was still nervously cursing Lupin in a low voice. He opened the letter and only glanced at it before handing it to Creature helplessly. Maiden, forget that I am not familiar with the British way of writing. I roughly understand that the content of the letter is related to the time converter, but I don't understand the specifics. Creature, translate. Creature glanced at Li Feng with contempt in his eyes, muttering words such as, illiteracy. After a while, Creature said respectfully, Boss, Mr. Lupine invited you to go to the Black Mansion tonight. The letter said that they have obtained the time turner and related information. Considering that it takes a lot of time for you to learn magic, I would like to talk to you. You talk about trading the locket first. After finishing speaking, Creature looked at Li Feng with expectant eyes and said with some hesitation, Boss, when will we return to Black's old house? Return. Li Feng frowned. Although he knows that the house elves are loyal and Creature is a bit old-fashioned, he is still loyal to me now. What does it mean to go back to Black's old house? Hearing this makes me sad. People are unhappy. Li Feng half crouched in front of Creature and said in a stern tone, Creature, Sirius has transferred you to me, so you are no longer an elf of the Black family, but my house elf, do you understand? Creature lowered his head and nodded with a hint of grievance and fear. Yes, boss. Of course, Li Feng also knew that some things should not be rushed. At least it would be difficult to make Creature completely forget about the Black family before treating his neurosis, so Li Feng just gave a warning and said nothing more. Creature, take the locket, Li Feng said while opening the portal to Black's old house. We will complete the transaction now. When Li Feng crossed the portal and arrived at Blake's old house, his expression suddenly became a little embarrassed when he saw the people who greeted him. Li Feng looked at Sirius, who looked drunk, and then at Dumbledore, who was looking at the portal with a smile. Li Feng couldn't help complaining in his heart. When you locked me in the basement before, I thought Lupine was the reinforcement you called. Now it seems that Dumbledore is the reinforcement you called, right? Or maybe after Sirius knew that I was not from this world, he specifically notified Dumbledore and asked this big boss to check my details. Does this count as anti-aircraft cannons to kill mosquitoes? As soon as I walked out of Novice Village, I had to face the big boss Lao Dang. Just absorbing his spiritual thoughts was enough for me to explain for a long time. Dumbledore seemed to see that Li Feng was a little nervous when facing him, and said with a smile, "It seems that you know me, but please allow me to introduce myself. I am the recipient of the Order of Merlin, First Class, Abern Dumbledore. Nice to meet you, Mr. Austen. By the way, your clothes are beautiful." "Me too, nice to meet you." Li Feng stretched out his hand to shake Dumbledore's hand, looked down at the clothes that turned into casual suits and said, "I like this suit too, but your self-introduction is too. Are you being humble? As far as I know, your title is not just a first-class Merlin medalist." Dumbledore raised his eyebrows, and while carefully sensing Li Feng's magic power, he put on a proud expression on his face and said, "Really, has my name spread to the multiverse?" Sure enough, Comrade Dang already knows that I am not from this world and that Dumbledore knows about the multiverse. Li Feng glanced at Lupine and Sirius, turned to Dumbledore and said, "How do you know about the multiverse? It seems that your magical world is a relatively closed world." Dumbledore smiled mysteriously. His friend and elder Nico Flamel said that death is just the beginning of another adventure. In addition, Dumbledore was not a wizard who knew muggles at all, so he started from here. Many facts were guessed in the words. It's just that Dumbledore didn't explain anything to Li Feng. Sometimes maintaining a sense of mystery can also be an invisible deterrent. Dumbledore took out the time turner and a stack of information and placed them in front of Li Feng, and said, "Can you tell me about the Horcrux and Pettigrew?" There was nothing much to say about Pettigrew. Li Feng just repeated what he had said to Lu Ping before, but Li Feng was a little confused about the Horcrux. He only remembered the general plot of the movie and forgot all the details. Just like Horcrux, he only remembered that it was related to Voldemort's resurrection, but did not remember the specific points. After thinking about it, Li Feng said honestly, "I don't even know what a Horcrux is. I only know that Voldemort made 7 of them, one of which is the locket." After recalling the plot, Li Feng, who had other plans, signaled Creature to hand the locket to Dumbledore and added, "I didn't know this was a Horcrux until I saw the locket. Can you tell that this is a Horcrux?" Dumbledore turned over the locket with his wand, slightly surprised, and said, "If you hadn't told me that this was a Horcrux, I really wouldn't have noticed it if I was so careless. I'm curious how you saw this ordinary-looking locket." Taking the bait, Li Feng took out his matchbox-sized magic book and returned to its original appearance under Dumbledore's interested eyes. Li Feng turned the magic book to the page introducing spiritual spells, indicating that Dumbledore could check out the principles of the spells at will, including Li Feng's improved Eye of Magic, and said, "That's it." Dumbledore glanced at Li Feng. He was curious, because Lupine and Sirius had said before that Li Feng was a stingy master and liked to trade everything, but now, why did it suddenly become so popular that even this unique spell was freely available to others? However, Dumbledore was more curious about what kind of magic could allow people to spot Horcruxes at a glance, so if he had any doubts, he could only keep it to himself. For a long time, after watching the spirit spell, Dumbledore closed his eyes and thought. He suddenly opened his eyes and said with interest, "It's a very interesting magic. The ability of the Eye of Magic can not only see through Horcruxes, but also as long as the soul has not been destroyed. Change, all external changes can be seen through by the Dharma Eye. For example, when faced with the use of Polyjuice Potion, that can change a person's appearance, and when someone uses animagus to turn into an animal, the Dharma eye can see the other person's true appearance. After finishing speaking, Dumbledore said thoughtfully, "Mr. Austen, you deliberately showed me the dark eyes spell. As long as I learn the dark eyes spell, I will naturally be able to tell at a glance whether Ron's pet is Peter Pettigrew, right?" Li Feng pinched his nose awkwardly, nodded slightly and said, "Yes." On the side, seeing Li Feng nodding his head shamelessly, Lu Ping said disdainfully, "That's a good idea. So this time, Mr. Austen, what are you going to get in exchange for your magic?" Li Feng didn't care about Lu Ping's contempt. As long as he could improve his strength and knowledge reserves, it didn't matter if he was despised by others. He would neither get pregnant nor lose a piece of meat. And how could you throw away the opportunity to get benefits from the famous Dumbledore? Li Feng shrugged and said, "I want to enter Hogwarts to practice." If Dumbledore could agree to this condition, Li Feng felt that his previous plan to sneak into the school secretly could be scrapped. Why should he enter the school cautiously when he could enter the school openly? On the one hand, I was cautiously improving my strength, and on the other hand, I showed up directly at the Hogwarts dining table to eat and drink, and by the way, I could also sit in on the magic class. How cool it was. Pity. Dumbledore was stunned. He understood that Li Feng wanted to use the school's environment to quickly improve his strength, but don't say that he is not the principal now. Even if he is still the principal, he can't let people enter and leave Hogwarts at will. He is the principal, but he still has the pressure from the school board, and Hogwarts is not his place to do whatever he says. "I'm afraid I can't agree to your request." Dumbledore looked at the thick magic book, shook his head and said, "But we can change to a more reasonable condition. You teach me magic, and I will teach you magic. How about that?" Dumbledore, who was so passionate about transfiguration, taught him himself. Li Feng only felt that this happiness came a bit suddenly. Let's not talk about how Lupine's strength compares with Dumbledore. Dumbledore has been a professor all his life. His teaching experience alone is far behind Lupin. He is a fool. Will refuse. Li Feng nodded his head like a chicken sucking rice. With a little embarrassment, Shanshan asked, if I sneak into Hogwarts quietly, can you pretend that you didn't see it?" Lupin on the side was about to refuse, but Dumbledore nodded with a smile and said, "Okay, but I need you to do something for me." Li Feng asked with a confused look, "What's the matter?" Dumbledore, "Watch Peter Pettigrew." Li Feng was a little stunned when he heard Dumbledore's request. He was a little confused. There are a lot of people who can monitor Pettigrew at Hogwarts, just like the few people who are trusted by Dumbledore. The branch principals all have their own special skills. Minerva McGonagall may be said to be powerful, but she has no experience in spying on people. But what about Professor Severus Snape, who has facial paralysis or is born with a gloomy face? Not only was this guy extraordinary in strength, but he also relied on his excellent acting skills to infiltrate the mysterious group of people, and letting Severus Snape spy on Peter was not just a joke. Is it possible that Dumbledore was worried that Professor Snape would know that his beloved Lily Potter was actually killed by Pettigrew, and that Snape could not help but convulse and slap Pettigrew to death, delaying the witnesses who exonerate Sirius? After all, Snape and Sirius were not easy to deal with, and he was also proficient in making various potions. It was quite easy to kill a lot of people without anyone noticing. Speaking of this, Li Feng had to give a thumbs up to Snape's view of love. Look at others, helplessly watching his beloved woman become someone else's wife and give birth to a child, especially when this other person is someone he hates. As a result, after so many years, not to mention that Snape still hasn't let go of Ms. Lily Potter. Just seeing Harry Potter, who looks like a love rival, hanging around him all day long is enough. Not for magic. The future of the world has to protect him. Li Feng expressed his admiration for Snape, but he believed that he could never do it. If Li Feng were Snape, once Lily chose to leave and throw herself into the arms of his rival, Li Feng would only choose to forget Lily. If Li Feng were Snape, he would only choose to forget Lily. I really felt uncomfortable, so I waited for Harry's father to secretly dig out the grave and whip the corpse to relieve his anger. As for protecting the other person's children, why, it's not his own kind. It would be nice if he could treat him calmly. How dare Harry show his teeth to him? Do you know whether the father or the son understands that a severe beating is inevitable? Li Feng frowned and thought about it. Although he felt confident about sneaking into Hogwarts to practice, he had to hide after entering the school because of his strength. He was afraid that the professors in the school would find out and beat him up. Who made Li Feng do it now? I don't have the strength to face several professors. At that time, some professor subdued him and sent him to the Ministry of Magic for trial. It was a good thing that he was sentenced to live in Arcabin. After all, the Dementors were all his slaves. Arcabin could be said to be Li Feng's territory, and he was afraid of cheating. But before the Ministry of Magic throws Li Feng into Arcabin, it would be bad if he casts a few spells to absorb spiritual thoughts or seal memories. If Li Feng forgets to return to the Marvel world, he will spend his whole life in Harry Potter, the world will die of old age. Why? Before he figured out the reason, Li Feng didn't want to put himself in danger easily. You can also see my strength. Even if the spells I master are different from yours, you will be a little confused after you confront me for the first time, but what happens after that? Once you become familiar with my magic, I won't be beaten by you, so the conditions for monitoring Pettigrew are too dangerous for me. Pointing to the shape of his mouth, Li Feng said quietly, listen to what I say clearly. I tell you frankly that I don't have any lofty goals or ideals to change the world. I am just greedy for life and afraid of death. I have mastered extraordinary power of ordinary people. Finally, Li Feng looked at Dumbledore and said seriously, aren't you the principal of Hogwarts? Why don't you just monitor Pettigrew yourself? Not to mention Pettigrew's fake mouse. Even if the mouse becomes a spirit and can dig holes, it's impossible for it to slip out of your hands. Facing Li Feng, who dared to frankly say that he was greedy for life and afraid of death, Lu Ping glanced at the Horcrux on the dining table with twitching eyes, and recalled speechlessly what Li Feng had said about using the locket to trade with the mysterious man. You before, where has your courage gone? Or was it just to scare me? Dumbledore smiled and said, the problem is I can't go back to Hogwarts now. Li Feng frowned and scratched his head, feeling as if Dumbledore was joking. No matter how busy you are, you can still find time to write a letter. It's great to write a letter back to school and ask Snape to take charge of Pettigrew. At the same time, let Minerva McGonagall supervise Snape. Li Feng stretched out his hand to signal Dumbledore to explain what, unable to return to Hogwarts, meant. Dumbledore, it seems you haven't seen what happened in the school recently. See, did I install surveillance equipment at Hogwarts? Did I see something, or did Dumbledore know something? Li Feng glanced at Lu Ping in confusion. Could this guy tell Dumbledore that I can see everything through time? Li Feng spread his hands and said with some speechlessness, I was so full that I checked the timeline all day long. After all, once a person knows what will happen in the future, what fun is there in life? There are no surprises or surprises. It can't touch the heartstrings anymore. Maybe you are right. Dumbledore thought for a while and felt that Li Feng's words made some sense. If someone knew from the beginning what kind of person he would become in the future, perhaps his current hard work and motivation would be reduced. Mostly, it's like looking forward to a sumptuous dinner at home after get off work every day. Once you know what you're going to have for dinner, will you still have that feeling of anticipation? It's okay to know for 2 days a day, but it's different to know what to have for dinner every day. After all, Li Feng doesn't look like an old man who likes plain and simple days. Dumbledore touched his gray beard and told Li Feng what happened in the school. He looked at Li Feng expectantly and asked, do you know what the monster in the secret room is? Li Feng, who had no impression of the details of the movie, vaguely recalled something after hearing what Dumbledore said. I was wondering why Hagrid was in Amazingcobin. This kid was unlucky. 50 years ago, he was framed for releasing the monster in the Chamber of Secrets. As a result, under Dumbledore's protection, he was forced to drop out of school and became a school forest ranger. Now the students in the school were attacked by the monster in the Chamber of Secrets again, causing the old things to be brought up again. Hagrid, the scapegoat, was directly imprisoned in Amazingcobin. And Dumbledore was suspended. Li Feng nodded slightly and said, I know what that is. Before Li Feng could finish his words, Basilisk, Dumbledore interrupted, did you see any students die because of the monster? Seeing Li Feng stunned for a moment and then shook his head to deny that anyone had died, Dumbledore breathed a sigh of relief and said, if you tell me the true identity of the monster, what will I have to pay? So you interrupted me to prevent me from asking too much. Li Feng thought about it and said, if possible, can the school open the forbidden book area of the library to me? I want to copy some magic. I need to think about it. Dumbledore handed the time converter and information to Li Feng, while indicating that the transaction was over and you could get out. Li Feng, who understood Dumbledore's consciousness, smacked his lips, stood up and looked at Lupin, and asked, when will you teach me magic? Tomorrow night. Dumbledore smiled, tonight will be a busy night. Hearing that it was Dumbledore who answered him, Li Feng scratched his eyebrows. Why does Dumbledore say that you are the one who will teach the basics of magic? Lupin looked at Dumbledore with a puzzled look on his face. Professor. He extended his hand to signal Lupin and Dumbledore, who would ask again later, and stood up and walked to Li Feng, saying, that's right, I will teach you magic for a period of time. As for the matter of Pettigrew, we can monitor him if we can. If you think it's dangerous, forget it. Li Feng was a little confused by Dumbledore's behavior. He couldn't figure out. After he sneaked into Hogwarts, would Dumbledore pretend not to see him, or would he find him out? Also, Dumbledore seemed to agree that he would use spirit spells in exchange for teaching him magic. With a little uncertainty, Li Feng patted the magic book in his pocket and asked ambiguously, when will you learn the spells related to spirits? If Dumbledore said he would not learn, there would be nothing to say, and the deal would fail. If Dumbledore stated the specific time to learn spirit spells, the deal would naturally succeed. Tomorrow night, I will teach you magic and you will teach me magic. Dumbledore blinked and said curiously, can you show me your portal spell that is different from our world? Li Feng nodded slightly with a confused look on his face, said goodbye to a few people, stretched out his hand to open the portal, and said to Creature who looked nostalgic, Creature, we are leaving. The moment the portal disappeared, Lupin couldn't wait to ask, Professor. Dumbledore stretched out his hand to signal Lupin to keep quiet, while squinting his eyes to sense the magic fluctuations caused by the portal. After a long time, Dumbledore sat back in his seat with satisfaction after gaining some knowledge, and said, Lupin, I know what you want to ask. In fact, Li Feng's answer has already told us a lot. Lupin was stunned for a moment, squinted his eyes and recalled, Austin said that no one was killed by the monster, and asked you if you could enter Hogwarts to practice, which means a lot of problems, such as the monster will eventually be killed or driven away, and you will definitely return to the school to take charge. After thinking for a while, Lupin continued, when he talked about the monster in the Chamber of Secrets, his face did not show any fear or other expressions. I only saw that he was bothered. Considering Austin's strength, maybe the monster is not as strong as we thought before. Not only that, I also heard and saw more things, but there is no evidence to prove it, such as calling you, Professor, and I sense the darkness of the law magic. Dumbledore shook his head slightly and said, we also need to consider his means of restraining monsters, just like he can restrain werewolves and dementors. Maybe monsters will just become weak in front of him. But you were right about one thing. Dumbledore took out a pen and paper to write a letter to Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape in the school, saying, Austin's strength is indeed not as strong as I thought. After all, he doesn't have the courage to break into Hogwarts. I'm just curious about how he sneaked into the school. Is it relying on his portal? Sirius, who hadn't spoken for a long time, looked at Lupin and said faintly, since Austin can see my past, maybe he can also see Lupin's past, such as seeing the passage of the Whomping Willow. With his portal, maybe he can really learn magic with you while ignoring Hogwarts' defenses. After leaving Blake's old house and returning to the Leaky Cauldron, Li Feng leaned against the window with a cup of tea. He looked up at the crescent moon hanging in the sky and thought in his mind, I will start learning the magic of this world tomorrow night. There was no time to explore Hogwarts at night. Although there was more freedom during the day, it was too difficult to sneak into Hogwarts. So I'd better go to Hogwarts tonight to explore the way. If I'm lucky enough to find the room of requirement, even if I don't find it, I still have to find the entrance to some secret rooms, such as the passage where the basilisk crawls. As long as once I find the passage, I can hide in the underground of Hogwarts to practice magic. As long as I use a more concealed portal when entering and exiting from now on, no one will be able to find me. After thinking for a long time, Li Feng decided to take action tonight. He turned around and asked, Creature, do you know about the Screaming Shack? Creature thought for a while and asked, "Boss, are you asking about the haunted house in the wizarding village of Hogsmeade? I know where it is." "Great, I'm still worried about where Hogsmeade is and how to get there." Now that Creature knows about the Shrieking Shack, it would be fine if he just showed up in the shack. By the way, doesn't a shack mean a simple house? But why do I think the screaming shacks in the movie are all in the shape of villas? Is there any misunderstanding here? Did the director think that there was a lot of money and built the shacks into villas, or did the translator staff as villa, translated as shack? It can't be that British villas have another name, called shacks. I'm not very well educated, but I'm not easy to deceive. Hearing Creature call the screaming shack a haunted house, Li Feng couldn't help but curl his lips slightly and said, "That's the one, but it's not a haunted house, but a secret passage leading to Hogwarts." Quote. Creature blinked and looked at Li Feng curiously, his eyes full of questioning consciousness, as if he wanted to ask but was afraid of Li Feng's scolding. Li Feng thought for a while. He didn't need Creature's help in exploring the route this time, but he might need Creature's help in getting in and out of Hogwarts in the future. If Creature was afraid of haunted houses, it would be a little trouble, so he might as well tell Creature the truth. Che, let him know about the Shrieking Shack, at least so that Creature doesn't have to be afraid of the so-called haunted house. After sorting out the plot, Li Feng said, "Speaking of the Screaming Shack, we have to talk about Lupin. He was bitten by a werewolf since he was a child, but later he was able to avoid being discovered while attending Hogwarts. What do you think is the identity of a werewolf?" Quote. Li Feng reminded him that it was related to Lupin's identity as a werewolf, so why else? Creature tilted his head and counted on his fingers, calculating something. After a while, Creature, with a cute expression on his face, opened his eyes and whispered softly, "The Screaming Shack appeared at the same time that Lupin appeared in Hogwarts' time." "Yes," Li Feng said with a grin. "That was when Dumbledore took Lupin in and provided him with a place to transform when he was studying at Hogwarts. At the same time, he used a Whomping Willow to protect the safety of the entrances and exits on campus. The villagers in Hogsmeade heard the noises and screams and thought they were the sounds of ferocious ghosts. In addition, Dumbledore specifically encouraged people to spread such rumors, which made the villagers subconsciously fear and stay away from the Shrieking Shack. This is both conservative and conservative. Lupin's secret also ensures the safety of the villagers from being bitten by Lupin, who turns into a werewolf. But now, it's an advantage for us, allowing us to sneak into Hogwarts through the Shrieking Shack." "Us?" Creature blinked and asked, "Boss, are you taking me with you?" Of course, Li Feng glanced at the room and said, "The cost of living in the Leaky Cauldron every day is not a small expense. When we settle down at Hogwarts, we will hide in the school from now on, but sometimes you still have to help me buy some supplies after leaving school, so you still need to familiarize yourself with and master some channels as soon as possible." Quote. After saying that, Li Feng took out the magic book and the time turner information and handed them to Creature, and told Creature to keep an eye on a suitcase full of supplies at home. That was Li Feng's entire property, and he didn't want to be stolen by thieves. Li Feng fainted in the toilet from crying. "Creature, after taking me to the Shrieking Shack, you can return to the Leaky Cauldron and translate the information about the time turner into Chinese characters and copy it into the magic book. The house elf's teleportation is different from the wizard's apparition, but Li Feng still feels uncomfortable. Like the time travel gate, he is squeezed out of the space. So when Creature took Li Feng to the Shrieking Shack, Li Feng's first reaction was he was holding his knees with both hands and breathing heavily. "Maiden, isn't there a more comfortable way to teleport? Or does space magic have this virtue? Otherwise, don't say that teleportation is related to space, and just change the name to Milking Spell." After a while, Creature saw that Li Feng had recovered from the side effects of the teleportation spell and said, "Boss, I'm going back to copy the information." After saying that, Creature put down some torches and other tools and disappeared in front of Li Feng in an instant. Li Feng scratched his head and stomped on the wooden floor by the stairs while amusing himself and said, "I only remember that the entrance to the passage is under the floor by the stairs, but I don't know where exactly it is. If I get lucky, sorry, I couldn't find the entrance shack, but don't blame me for buying a few erha, known as the expert, in-house demolition, and keeping them here." Before Li Feng finished mumbling, Li Feng felt that the sound on the floor under his feet was abnormal, and there was a hollow echo. "Found this," Do all houses in the magical world have spirituality? Are you also afraid of creatures like Erha that can tear down homes? Otherwise, why did I find the entrance just as I was chanting Erha? Li Feng licked his lips and without saying a word, he raised his hand and unleashed a magical impact on the floor. The rotten floor could not stand Li Feng's tossing, and suddenly a dark hole appeared under the impact of magic. Li Feng stroked his eyes with one hand, opened the Dharma Eye, lit a torch, jumped into the dark passage, and walked leisurely to the exit of the Whomping Willow. Li Feng carefully poked his head out of the hole and looked at the Whomping Willow, which twisted itself into a twist and rested quietly. Not sure about the sleeping quality of the Whomping Willow, and not wanting to disturb this plant that likes to hit people, Li Feng carefully explored the surroundings, then tiptoed out of the passage, and ran into the school along a narrow path under the cover of night. I don't know whether I should say that Hogwarts is big enough or it's a bit late now. Students and teachers have already rested on their beds. Li Feng, who entered the school with the Dharma Eye, walked around for half an hour without encountering any human figures, but he did encounter a few ghosts. You know, there are real ghosts in Hogwarts, and they can act as night guards. Fortunately, with the Dharma Eye, Li Feng was able to avoid them in advance. After a long time, Li Feng, who hadn't found any hiding spots, stayed in a dark corner, speechlessly watching a fast-moving snake-shaped spirit appear in the wall. There was no need to guess. Li Feng knew that the guy with such a large spirit body and the ability to swim in the water pipe was the monster in the secret room, that is, the snake monster that would make anyone pregnant if he stared at them. Mr. Basilisk, you are dumbfounded, right? Your glaring ability can't penetrate the wall, so now you find me and can't kill me, but I can see you clearly. I remember that the petrified students happened in the corridor and other places, so this basilisk must be able to crawl out of the water pipe. Li Feng scratched his head. How about following this basilisk and finding out where the entrance to the underground secret room is, or where his nest is? After all, that is my future home. It's not good if I don't know something about it. As for this basilisk, when he returns to his snake nest, I will find some steel and welding machines. Let me, a junior welder, show my skills and weld the door of his house shut, so that he doesn't have to go out to make trouble for me. Speaking of which era was the welding machine invented? Is there a welding machine in this world? The power supply is also a problem. How about I open a portal to the power plant and borrow some electricity directly? Li Feng relaxed himself in a self-entertaining way, while watching the spirit of the basilisk vigilantly, in case the basilisk suddenly came out of the water pipe and glared himself to death. After a while, the basilisk crawled out of a door that seemed to be painted on the wall as Li Feng had expected. When the snake's head just showed a little, Li Feng quickly opened the mirror space and isolated himself from the real world. Li Feng didn't believe it. As a mirror space that can isolate the connection between the devil and hell, the basilisk can't stare him to death through the mirror space. If the basilisk really has such a powerful ability, Li Feng will open the door and go home without saying a word, and then look for roosters that can lay eggs all over the world, and then find some toads to let them help hatch the basilisk. At that time, Li Feng, who was infested with a group of basilisks, dared to directly face Thanos without the Infinity Gauntlet, let alone a small scene like the Battle of New York. Even if Thanos's magic resistance was high, he couldn't be alive and kicking after being surrounded by a group of basilisks. Until the basilisk disappeared in front of him, Li Feng grinned and opened the portal to leave the mirror space and quickly got into the water pipe. After turning around and around along the water pipe for a while, Li Feng, who kept walking down, came to a pit full of bones. After looking at the entrances to the passages around him, Li Feng rubbed his brows and recalled the direction of the snake monster's lair. After a long time, Li Feng, who couldn't remember anything, picked up a bone that looked like a mouse on the ground and threw it into the sky. After looking at the passage pointed by the mouse's skull, Li Feng walked into the passage. After a while, Li Feng looked at an iron door with a snake relief carved on it in silence. I just gave up the idea of looking for a secret room, and you suddenly appeared in front of me. Also, I forgot that the entrance to the secret room needs to be opened in snake language. I can't get in even if I find the secret room, unless I find some TNT to blow you up. Since he couldn't get in the door, Li Feng had nothing to hesitate about. He rubbed his eyes, which were a little sore because he had been using the Dharma Eye all the time, and immediately turned around to search for other more open places. After a long time, Li Feng finally found a satisfactory open space. However, before carving Merlin's magic ring, Li Feng first had to make sure whether the concentration of magic power in the tunnel of Hogwarts was the same as that on campus. If it was different from the campus, Li Feng would be a fool to risk practicing near the basilisk's nest. Chapter 71. A quarter of an hour later, Li Feng, who was sitting cross-legged on a stone and meditating, happily opened his eyes. The concentration of this magic power is strong enough. There was nothing to say. Since the concentration of magic power underground in Hogwarts was still very high, Li Feng immediately carved the Merlin magic ring on the ground. After a while, Li Feng stood in the middle of the Merlin demonic ring, took a deep breath to calm down his mind, and then his physical body sat down cross-legged, while his spiritual body left his body and floated in midair meditating. The moment the magic power poured in, Li Feng clearly felt that his magic power was soaring rapidly. He couldn't help grinning until his back teeth were revealed. If the magic power accumulated in normal times is 1, the magic power accumulated at Hogwarts is 3, and when Merlin is turned on, the magic ring and spirit body, I don't know how many times it has been doubled. The most important thing is that the magic here is gentle and there are no side effects of indigestion. Maybe let me stay at Hogwarts for a few years. When I return to Marvel, except for the Ancient One, I won't be able to defeat any of the remaining temple mages in a duel, not even Mordo. Opponent, this feeling of having strength is so refreshing. After an unknown amount of time, Li Feng, who was meditating with his saliva on his face, felt that his stomach began to make noises, making hungry, gurgling sounds one after another, as if to remind Li Feng that it was time for midnight snacks. Li Feng, who stopped meditating, rubbed his stomach, stood up, destroyed Merlin's magic ring, and then followed the water pipe to climb into Hogwarts. In a certain potions classroom in Hogwarts, Li Feng remembered that somewhere in a cupboard or bookcase, there was a potions textbook that Snape called himself the Half-Blood Prince when he was a student. There were various improved potions in it, enough to make Li Feng greedy. Taking advantage of the deserted Hogwarts at night, Li Feng wanted to take the opportunity to look for this notebook. If he was unlucky and didn't find it, it didn't matter. The worst he could do was ask Creature to take all the potions classrooms after Hogwarts went on summer vacation. Look them all over again. Li Feng climbed out of the water pipe and came to a utility room. As soon as he opened the door and didn't have time to look around, Li Feng heard a man's questioning voice coming from behind him. Who are you? I wish I'd never seen you before. Li Feng's expression froze, and he said bitterly, if you are so unlucky, I will just eat some late-night snacks from Hogwarts and judge how the school's elf craftsmanship compares to Creature's. Secondly, I will just find a book by the way. What? Just met the professor. Li Feng, who slowly turned around with his hands raised, saw a Xiaobao professor wearing a slightly pink suit in front of him. Li Feng said with an uncertain tone, Professor Gilderoy Lockhart, good evening. Lockhart nodded slightly, glanced at the utility room, and said doubtfully, good evening, sir, are you? As expected, this guy is the one. The other professors all wear wizard robes that have never been changed for thousands of years. Only this professor who writes books can wear them in such a fancy way. Li Feng glanced at Lockhart's empty hands, looked behind Lockhart with a grin, and said, good evening, Principal Dumbledore. Lockhart saw Li Feng greeting him behind him, or the principal, and subconsciously turned his head to look behind him, but there was no Dumbledore behind Lockhart. Just when Lockhart turned around in confusion and was about to ask Li Feng, what's going on, Li Feng had already approached Lockhart with a fist as big as a casserole. Before Lockhart could react, Li Feng punched Lockhart, fainted to the ground. Li Feng glanced at the quiet surroundings, and then dragged Lockhart neatly into the utility room. In the utility room, Li Feng looked at Lockhart lying on the floor, couldn't help but touched his chin, and said to himself, it's not good for my appearance to be seen by outsiders, and I will easily be wanted by the Ministry of Magic and the school. Sorry, Professor Lockhart, I can lend you your little face. In Li Feng's opinion, although the transformation spell he learned from the world of The Sorcerer's Apprentice was not perfect, and there were many flaws during the day, at night the only gatekeeper and manager in Hogwarts who could not use magic was Member Mr. Argus Filch will be haunting the corridors with his cat. Oh, I almost forgot, that cat was the first creature to be petrified by the basilisk this semester, so now there is only Filch. People patrolling the corridors at night. Li Feng felt that he had turned into Lockhart and was using the cover of the night. As long as Filch didn't get close enough to check, he should still be able to fool the other party. And with Lockhart's identity, Li Feng could confidently search for the Half-Blood Prince's notebook and kitchen in various classrooms. It's just that Li Feng's wishful thinking was too ideal. He had just changed his clothes into Lockhart's and walked out of the utility room with his face in his face. Li Feng turned around and saw Filch looking at him curiously with his head hanging down. Before Li Feng could speak, Filch grabbed Li Feng and said as he walked, "Didn't you listen to what Professor McGonagall said? All professors should gather in the corridor on the second floor." Gather? Li Feng was a little confused. He didn't sleep in the middle of the night, and all the professors gathered together. Hogwarts was not a military school, so he had never heard of such a thing as gathering at night. When Li Feng was just thinking about whether to knock Filch out, Filch had already pulled Li Feng through a corner and came to the corridor with bright torches on both sides of the wall. More importantly, Li Feng also saw a large group of people surrounding him in the distance. People, looking at a wall and whispering. "Okay, now I can't run away even if I knock out Filch." Li Feng's face drooped, regretting that his brain was twitching just now or something. Why should he worry about why Hogwarts gathered at night, causing him to miss the last step to knock out Filch? A good opportunity. Now that it is here, surrounded by a group of professors, Li Feng just feels panicked in his heart. In order to avoid being discovered that he was the fake Lockhart, Li Feng stood listlessly at the back of the crowd, praying that everyone would just pretend they didn't see him. Unfortunately, Li Feng's luck was really bad today. He was spotted from a distance as soon as he arrived. Snape took a fancy to it. Lockhart had been a professor at the school for so many days. Snape had long known that Lockhart was a liar and a liar. In addition, Lockhart had repeatedly provoked Snape without hesitation. Snape had long seen that Lockhart was not its pleasing to the eye. If there is an opportunity to punish the other party, Snape will not miss the opportunity. Just seeing Lockhart hiding behind the crowd uncharacteristically, Snape, who felt something was wrong, frowned and thought, with his past style, shouldn't he run up to him and open his mouth to show off his wealth of knowledge? "Why are you hiding so far away today? Isn't this Lockhart a fake?" After thinking about it, Snape said to Li Feng, "Professor Lockhart, a student was captured by a monster. Here is your chance to show off." Li Feng, who looked confused, stared subconsciously and said, "Performance." "Yes," Snape, who seemed expressionless but was actually observing Li Feng carefully, said, "Last night, didn't you say that you always knew where the entrance to the secret room was?" McGonagall on the side was also disgusted with Lockhart, who even a blind man could see is a liar, and said quietly, "It's just right, please go deal with the monster alone. After all, we have never seen you show off your skills, no problem." "Professor Lockhart. I didn't, don't talk nonsense, I didn't say that, I was just looking for something to eat and a book by the way." Li Feng, who was about to cry, was stunned for a long time before he remembered that this was at the end of the plot of Harry 2, where the basilisk brought Harry's future wife, Ginny Weasley, to the secret room, and eventually killed him. Thing. "You said you kidnapped no one, kidnapping the protagonist's wife, isn't this a boring life? Don't you know that under the halo of the protagonist, all evil and heretic people will kneel down? But for now, let's fool Snape and others first, especially Snape. What grudges do you and Lockhart have? No matter how you look at it, you feel that you are looking at me in a bad way. The problem is that I am not the real Lockhart." Li Feng Shanshan whispered. "It's okay to take you to the entrance of the secret room, but I need to prepare some things." No matter what, Li Feng has decided to fool a few people and find an opportunity to leave. It doesn't matter whether he is a basilisk or not. This is what Harry, the protagonist, should worry about. He is just a soy saucer. As for the notebook, of course I'll look for it later. Unfortunately, Snape, who had begun to doubt Li Feng, obviously would not let Li Feng go easily. Seeing that Li Feng was trying to evade, Snape's lips slightly raised and he said, "What do you need to prepare? I'll help you." After saying that, Snape walked up to Li Feng, as if he was afraid that you would run away. Li Feng subconsciously took a step back, and Shanshan said, "No, I can do it myself." Li Feng's retreat made Snape feel that the other party had a guilty conscience, and he persisted, it would be a pity to miss such a good opportunity to perform. And with this experience, you can write a best-selling novel, right? Looking at Snape's posture, Li Feng felt that he couldn't escape without using some big moves. After recalling the plot, Li Feng said quietly, "Do you know the bathroom where the gold digger is? The entrance to the secret room is right there, but let me facing that basilisk, I can only say that you have to protect yourself. You want to kill the enemy but you don't have the strength, unless you can destroy the basilisk's eyes. After all, that thing is too disgusting and no one can stand it." Quote. On the side, Professor McGonagall heard Li Feng's words and couldn't help but cover her mouth and said, "Basilisk? Are you sure there is a basilisk in the school?" Li Feng shrugged and said, "There are many reasons. I remember one day Harry told me that he heard someone talking nearby, but I didn't hear it at all. At first, I thought it was Harry who was too tired and had auditory hallucinations. But then we all know that Harry can speak snake language, so can we imagine that Harry did hear something nearby, but the creature was a snake, so we couldn't hear it. Do you still remember the spiders running around in the school? The spider's natural enemy is the basilisk. Finally, there is also the rooster raised by Hagrid. It will eventually die inexplicably. I guess I don't need to say more about it. The basilisk is afraid of the crowing of the rooster, so the rooster was killed by the basilisk's owner, the descendant of Slytherin." After thinking about it, Professor McGonagall retorted, "If it is really a basilisk, then how many petrified students are you?" "Explain." Snape said thoughtfully. "You can only be killed if you look at the basilisk. Several students saw the basilisk either through cameras or mirrors, so they were lucky enough to escape death. Just petrified." Li Feng gave Snape a thumbs up, indicating that what the other party said was good, but Snape obviously didn't accept this trick and said, "Since you know that the monster is a basilisk, you should be allowed to deal with it. By the way, let me witness how you kill the snake." "Maiden, after talking for a long time, why am I still going? Also, what does it mean to witness me killing the basilisk?" In Snape's eyes, the real Lockhart was filled with scum and could do nothing but show off his feathers like a peacock. It could be said that except for a face and height that did not match the troll, he suspected that Lockhart was the descendant of a certain troll, but the man in front of him actually knew how to use reasoning to figure out that the monster was a basilisk. This was unreasonable, so Snape was sure that the Lockhart in front of him was a basilisk. Counterfeit. Since the other party is not the real Lockhart, will Snape let Li Feng leave alone before he understands the other party's identity and purpose? This is obviously impossible. Professor McGonagall only noticed that Lockhart had become different from usual, but he did not care about these changes and asked, "Then do you know who is the true successor of Slytherin?" I know, but what do you want me to say in public? Are you saying that Harry's wife caused everything? Don't you know that Harry has the halo of being the protagonist and that ordinary people can't afford to offend him? Let's wait for the day when I will be strong enough to speak in front of a crowd. For now, I will still be obscene and develop, not wasteful." Li Feng looked around and saw that everyone was looking at him curiously. He could only shake his head helplessly and said, "I don't know, there are too few clues." Professor McGonagall said regretfully, "Well, if you don't know, you know. The situation is urgent. First, please rescue the students who were captured by the basilisk. Then we are discussing who is the descendant of Slytherin. And Mag, sister, did I provoke you? Why did you ask me to kill the basilisk?" Li Feng stared and said, "I can't defeat the basilisk." Professor McGonagall looked at Li Feng with uncertain eyes. Now she didn't know whether the Lockhart in front of her could defeat the basilisk. If it was Mr. Liar in her memory, Professor McGonagall would only scare him and then let him go. Leave, but now, it seems that Lockhart is not as weak as he thought. On the side, Snape sneered, "Don't be so modest. Your abilities are almost as strong as Dumbledore's. Does it make any difference to you whether the basilisk is blind or not?" After saying that, Snape carried Li Feng to the bathroom where the gold digger was, cursing in his heart, "If the basilisk is blind, it won't be your turn to show off. Any professor present can kill the blind basilisk. Dragging you to deal with the basilisk is just an excuse to see who you really are." Professor McGonagall saw that the two of them were going to kill the basilisk now. After thinking about it, he turned to Mrs. Pomfrey, who was in charge of the school nurse, and said, "Please prepare some antidotes. In addition to the eyes of the basilisk, it can kill people." Don't underestimate the poison. Send it to the secret room as soon as possible after making it to prevent anyone from being poisoned. After speaking, Professor McGonagall hurriedly followed Snape's footsteps. Just when Li Feng was about to break free from Snape's big hand and escape, Snape touched Li Feng's chin with his wand and whispered in his ear, "Tell your true identity or become my bait to deal with the basilisk." Li Feng was stunned for a moment. "You saw that I was a copycat so quickly." "I knew I didn't master the art of transformation enough and had too many flaws." Li Feng signaled Snape to let go of him, and while secretly preparing the spell, he said, "Austin, Dumbledore knows me, and we are not enemies." McGonagall, who had just walked in front of Li Feng, glanced at Li Feng in surprise, took out a letter from his pocket and handed it to Snape, motioning Snape to read it himself, and said, "Are you Austin? Dumbledore tonight he wrote me a letter and told me a lot about you, especially telling me that you were planning to sneak into the school. I didn't expect you to enter the school that night. How did you enter the school?" Quote. Li Feng raised his eyebrows. Now that the two professors knew his specific identity, he still maintained the transformation technique. For Li Feng, who had little magic power, wasting magic power was a shameful act. While Li Feng restored his original appearance, he said, "That's how I walked in. I hope Comrade Dang will praise me in his letter as a very good person. It's a pity that I didn't see the word, good guy." Snape, who read the letter at a glance, raised his wand and said, "The letter said that you are a person who likes to trade. What kind of deal is it for you to pretend to be Lockhart? He uses his words to show off, and you use your strength to cover his words." Quote. "Oh, yes," Professor McGonagall, who was worried about what Li Feng did to Lockhart and the damage to the school's reputation, asked, "Where's Lockhart? What did you do to him?" Li Feng scratched his head. Lockhart was also a wizard after all, and his physique was different from ordinary people. So when Li Feng struck, he only knew to use all his strength to stun the opponent. As for how long the opponent would be unconscious, Li Feng said he didn't know. Sleeping in a utility room. Snape understood the consciousness in Li Feng's words and said, "Just say it, just knock him out." After saying that, Snape looked at McGonagall and said, "We will talk about Lockhart later. The most important thing at the moment is the first thing is to rescue the unlucky student." McGonagall agreed with this and reached out to signal Snape to lead the way. At the same time, she asked Li Feng, "Mr. Austin, you said before that you can protect yourself in front of the basilisk. Can you protect yourself and us at the same time? Leave it to us to kill the basilisk. Just let me be your assistant. It's easy." Li Feng nodded and said, "I can protect you from any harm, but can your magic kill the basilisk?" Snape, who walked to the front of the snake-killing trio, said, "Then I don't have to worry about it, but Dumbledore said you like trading, so I asked you to help kill the basilisk. What do you want to get?" Li Feng licked his lips and said greedily, "I want a lot of things, your potion notebook, your potion knowledge, and Professor McGonagall's transfiguration knowledge. If you meet me at school in the future, just treat it like nothing. Saw me?" Before Li Feng could finish speaking, Snape turned around and sneered at Li Feng, "Do you think I can't kill the basilisk without you? If you dare to make so many demands, you are not afraid that I will send you to the Ministry of Magic and let you stay there. In Alcaban. That's my territory. What's the difference between going to Azkaban and going home? When I go back to school, it's just a matter of a portal." Li Feng glanced at McGonagall and thought to himself, "It seems that Dumbledore didn't write everything in the letter. You can choose one of the conditions I proposed. I didn't say that I would exchange all the options for the conditions that protect you." McGonagall nodded slightly and said for Snape, "Then choose one of the conditions in exchange." Snape glanced at McGonagall, expressed his approval, then turned around and continued to lead the way. After a while, the three people came to an abandoned women's washroom on the second floor. Li Feng pointed to the snake-shaped faucet on the round washbasin and said, "You can open the entrance by using snake language." After saying that, Li Feng watched the two professors open the entrance to the secret room with an expression ready to watch a show, but Snape's way of opening the entrance was different from what Li Feng thought. Originally, Li Feng thought that Snape would ask Harry to come over to help, but it turned out that this guy didn't know whether he wanted to show off his strength in front of Li Feng, or simply didn't want to see Harry's face, so he just raised his wand and blew the sink into pieces. Block, revealing the hidden passage. Snape jumped into the passage without thinking, while Li Feng had no choice but to jump into the passage under the eyes of Professor McGonagall. It's not that Li Feng didn't think about escaping when he jumped into the passage, it's just that Li Feng felt that since he had discussed the deal with both of them, leaving like this was a waste of the opportunity to gain magical knowledge. After all, whether it was to learn Snape's potion skills, or Mag's knowledge of transfiguration, this is a sure profit deal for Li Feng. Li Feng, who already knew where the secret room was, returned to the pit full of skeletons. He led the two of them to the round door embossed with snakes and said, "I agree to use snake language to open the door or explode." "Open him." Li Feng secretly used his magic power with bewitching power and said, "You two, let me confirm again that the basilisk is inside. After opening this door, I will guarantee that you will not be harmed in exchange for the certain person mentioned before. If there are certain conditions, such as learning Professor Snape's knowledge of magic and Professor McGonagall's knowledge of transfiguration, is the transaction established." Although Snape and McGonagall sensed the magic fluctuations in Li Feng's body, they saw that the other party did not use any magic. They thought that Li Feng was just starting to use defensive methods, and subconsciously thought about finding an opportunity to teach Li Feng his own knowledge after returning. He nodded and said, "Okay." Hearing this, Li Feng, who understood that the seduction spell was successful, took a step back with a grin, indicating that the two of them could perform various fancy door-exploding spells. With the combined efforts of two powerful professors, the last entrance to the secret room was blown open. Snape and McGonagall each pointed their wands at their foreheads, looked at each other, and then entered the secret room. Although Li Feng didn't know what magic the two had cast on themselves, he also understood that it was a spell to prevent being stared to death by the basilisk. The basilisk needs to wait for its master to summon it before it appears, so you two are wasting your precious magic power. Curling his lips, Li Feng entered the secret room disdainfully. Unlike in the movie, Harry can immediately see Ginny lying on the ground after entering the secret room. But is it realistic? Li Feng said that he couldn't even see his fingers clearly. How could he have the time to see the little girl on the ground? The two professors also understood that in a dark environment, the basilisk would only kill them one by one. Thinking of this, the two professors cast a spell at the same time, fluorescent flash. It's just that the fluorescent light of the two people is obviously different from what Li Feng remembered. Let's not talk about the fact that the secret room is illuminated the same as during the day, but it is different when the two groups of bright lights float above their respective owners' heads. The moment the dark chamber became brighter, the two professors simultaneously saw Ginny lying on the ground in the distance. McGonagall was seen trotting towards Ginny, while Snape was trotting while guarding the surroundings in case the basilisk suddenly appeared, causing surprise. Soon, the three of them ran to Ginny. Mag squatted next to Ginny, felt Ginny's pulse and said, "Thank Merlin, she is still alive, but she needs to be sent to the hospital as soon as possible." "Professor McGonagall, I'm afraid it's not as simple as you think." Looking at Snape not far away, he seemed to have discovered something, and said with narrowed eyes, "Come out, I found you." In a corner of the secret room, Tom Marvolo Riddle, who was hiding in a dark corner, found himself very depressed when he was discovered by Snape. His plan was not like this. Shouldn't his enemy Harry Potter come? Why are three professors here? There was also one person whom Ginny didn't recognize at all. What does this mean? Are there any professors at Hogwarts that students have never seen? As a Horcrux created by Voldemort when he was a teenager, Tom said that he had been staying in his notebook and never thought that he would one day return to Hogwarts. Originally, he came back right away, just in time to find a physical body to resurrect. Tom even planned how to show off his skills for his ideals after resurrection. But when he went back to school to plan his resurrection, when Tom learned that his future self had been killed by a little brat, he immediately became uneasy. Why? I am younger and richer, and I am more handsome than Harry, so why should I still be the same? Can baby Harry kill his future self? So this time Tom captured Ginny and brought her to the Chamber of Secrets not just to resurrect himself, but also to meet the impulsive Harry and see if there was any chance of letting the basilisk kill him to avoid future trouble. It's just that Harry didn't see it now, but saw three professors. The most important thing is that he only has a memory now and has not been fully resurrected. Tom said that he has all the abilities except controlling the basilisk to kill people. How can he fight? After thinking about it, Tom simply summoned the basilisk, hoping to use the power of the basilisk to kill the 3 people who sabotaged his resurrection. Snape felt a little unhappy when he saw that he had clearly called out the hidden person, but the other person was still deceiving himself and thinking that he was bluffing him. When he was about to raise his wand to attack, he suddenly heard a sound of glass breaking, and he was wrapped in a strange space. Snape and McGonagall thought that this was the descendant of Slytherin attacking them, and when they were about to cast a spell to break the mirror space, they opened their dark eyes, and saw Li Feng, who was about to appear with the basilisk, and said quietly, "You too, this is me." As a means of self-protection, in this mirror space, not to mention that the basilisk cannot stare us to death, it is not even possible to detect it now. Quote. After saying that, Li Feng looked in the direction of Tom, who suddenly disappeared. What happened? I just found a broken spirit body, why did it suddenly run away? Seeing the basilisk appearing, Snape looked around with a confused expression. Snape frowned, raised his hand, and shot a small powerful spell at the space wall at the edge of the mirror space, saying, "Your protection is excellent. The basilisk is indeed unable to kill us, but don't you think we can't attack the basilisk even if we are hiding in another space?" Can't attack? How is it possible? Li Feng wondered where Tom had gone, and reached out to open the portal close to the basilisk's back, saying, "This is called a portal." The moment the portal opened, Li Feng suddenly saw Tom's spirit body appearing in the distance again. He was stunned. Li Feng continued, "You can bombard the magic on the back of the basilisk through the portal. If you are not afraid of being stared to death, you can also open the portal directly to the basilisk's eyes." Mag raised his hand and cast a powerful split spell, and said, "No, this is good. I am very satisfied with your protection method." Snape glanced at Li Feng, then looked at the white mark on the basilisk's back that had been blown apart by the split curse. He sighed at the thick skin of the basilisk, and at the same time, he held up his wand and fired out magic. Although the basilisk's skin has high magic resistance, it will still feel pain under endless magic attacks. Especially after McGonagall and Snape confirmed that the basilisk really had nothing to do with them, they raised their hands and used various powerful magics. Li Feng glanced at the magic of the 2 of them inadvertently, and felt that his clothes were almost covered with saliva. Li Feng, who maintained the portal spell, carefully watched the basilisk's actions. As soon as the basilisk showed signs of turning around, he would close the portal and quickly reopen the portal close to the basilisk's back. The moment he closed the portal, Li Feng discovered that Tom, who was watching the professor torture the basilisk in the distance, also disappeared at the same time. Looking at Ginny, who was lying on the ground dying, Li Feng felt that he already understood what was going on. The mirror space not only protected Snape and McGonagall, it also isolated Tom from appearing in the real world. So it's not impossible for Tom to appear after the portal is closed, but he can only appear in the mirror space. And does Tom, who has no power, dare to appear in the mirror space rashly? When Li Feng closes the portal, Snape and McGonagall will have plenty of ways to control him. Li Feng half crouched in front of Ginny and looked at the notebook on her waist. An idea suddenly came to his mind. Maybe I can get this notebook, but I don't know whether the slave contract has any effect on Horcruxes. If so, which means I have an additional teacher who is good at all kinds of black magic. Li Feng remembered that whether Tom could be resurrected depended on his life connection with Ginny. The weaker Ginny's life breath was, the stronger Tom became. But before he was completely resurrected, the connection between Tom and the notebook was stronger. This was why Harry used snake teeth to stab him. Just like Tom will die when wearing a notebook, the 2 can be said to be one. In addition, once the portal is closed, Tom's spirit body disappears, which gives Li Feng the opportunity to operate, such as throwing the notebook out of the mirror space and cutting off the connection between Tom and Ginny. Tom has no life to absorb, so he only can return to the notebook. Of course, if Ginny's safety could be guaranteed, Li Feng wouldn't mind throwing Ginny out of the mirror space, and he could have a good chat with Tom in the mirror space, such as resurrecting her in exchange for teaching him black magic. What Tom wants most is resurrection, and Li Feng has the technology for resurrection. Although it is a technological method, it is still resurrection. I believe Tom will agree to the exchange. Thinking of this, Li Feng picked up the notebook and thought, I wonder if Fury has resurrected the corpses. It would be great if he was resurrected. He could just grab a few corpses and then carve a contract on their foreheads and let them go back to S.H.I.E.L.D. Hee. Snape was able to make a living under the mysterious man because he was cautious and careful by nature. Now he felt at ease with Li Feng, whom he had known for less than an hour, so when he was confident about attacking the basilisk, Snape always be wary of Li Feng. Seeing Li Feng pick up the notebook from Ginny's chest with a silly smile as if he had picked up a huge sum of money, Snape subconsciously felt that something was wrong. While casting magic on the basilisk, he asked, "Mr. Austen, secretly take the little girl away. It's not a gentlemanly thing to do with a notebook, can you explain?" Li Feng grinned, raised the notebook, shook it, and threw the notebook into the portal nonchalantly, saying, "I think this notebook is too ugly and doesn't match this beautiful girl, so I'll throw it away. The worst is to wait for a snake. After the blame was stewed into snake soup, I bought a stack of beautiful notebooks for this little girl as an apology. What do you think of this explanation?" Quote, "Not very good." Snape frowned, looked at the notebook outside the image space, and said, "I seem to hear someone hoarsely yelling something just now." On the side, seeing the portal beginning to close again, McGonagall put down her wand and looked at Snape, saying, "I heard it too, I thought it was an illusion." After speaking, Mag looked at Li Feng, who still hadn't opened the portal, and asked, "Mr. Austen, do you know the reason and why you didn't open the portal?" "Yes, I know who is yelling, but I think it would be better to talk to Dumbledore about this." Li Feng rubbed his wrists while pretending to be shy and said, "As for the portal, you don't think magic is needed to open it? Keep it up. I don't have as much magic power as you, so let me rest for a while." In fact, Li Feng just wanted to see if his speculation was correct. If Ginny could wake up, it meant that the mirror space could indeed block Tom from absorbing her vitality. This would give Li Feng the space to pry magic out of Tom's mouth. With the pseudo-angel feathers restraining Tom, the temptation of resurrection, and the isolation of the mirror space as punishment, Li Feng really didn't believe that he couldn't pry the black magic out of Tom's mouth. If Ginny did not wake up, Li Feng should consider using the notebook in exchange for something from Dumbledore. After all, he would get nothing if he destroyed the notebook, so why not use the waste? The good news is that after the notebook was thrown out of the mirror space, Li Feng's Dharma Eye has seen that Ginny's vitality is no longer dissipated but is showing signs of recovery. Li Feng nodded slightly and reached out to Ginny to release physical recovery to speed up Ginny's recovery. After a while, Ginny, who had regained some strength, opened her confused eyes and looked at Professor McGonagall, who looked worried. "Professor, what's wrong with me?" McGonagall seems to treat the 4 colleges equally. Even if students in his own college violate school rules, he will punish them severely. He is a tutor who likes to treat students fairly. But when it comes to caring about students, look at Ginny's pale face when she was taken away. Professor McGonagall will know. Seeing that Ginny had awakened under Li Feng's spell, and her face was returning to rosy, Mag gratefully said, "Thank you," to Li Feng, lowered her head and hugged Ginny, and said, "Thank you Merlin's beard, it's great that you are okay." Quote. On the side, Snape looked at the ruby ring on Li Feng's finger with vigilant eyes. He noticed that whether it was the mirror space or the portal, as well as the final spell to heal Ginny, Li Feng was casting spells with bare hands. If the ruby ring on Li Feng's finger hadn't emitted magic fluctuations when he cast the spell, he would have thought that Li Feng was casting the spell without a wand. Seeing Snape staring at his ring, Li Feng shrugged and said, "You two, now is not the time to celebrate victory. There is a huge pot of snake soup waiting for you to cook outside." After saying that, Li Feng stretched out his hand to open the portal and signaled the two of them to continue working hard, while he watched the show from the side. Outside the mirror space, Tom, who had lost his life force intake, hid in his notebook. The basilisk was confused after it could not sense Tom. It did not know whether to go back to the snake's nest and sleep, or continue to carry out Tom's orders and kill the invisible professor. Just when the basilisk decided to go home and catch up on some sleep, it felt the previous halo of light appear against its back again, followed by a gorgeous magic attack on its body. Even if the basilisk's magic resistance is high, it can't withstand this kind of abuse where it can only be beaten in a fancy way, but can't make an effective counterattack. In the end, it can only stare miserably and lie there with hatred in a dead-end posture. In the secret room, it became a pile of magic materials in Li Feng's eyes. Looking at the motionless basilisk, Li Feng scratched his head and asked, "You too, should you go out now or roast the basilisk corpse before going out?" Snape glanced at Li Feng and sneered, "Don't you know that a creature like a snake can survive for a while even if its head is cut off? Mag and I are not afraid of looking at the basilisk when we go out now, but can you? Can you survive if you cut off your head? Do you think the snake is a fly or a weakling? It can continue to mate and reproduce by instinct without its head." Li Feng, who felt speechless, wanted to tell Snape that this was not a matter of survival, but that the snake's nerves were like this. Even if the head was smashed, the body would still react naturally once there was external stimulation. "What are we doing now? Continue to admire the enchanting corpse of the snake monster." Li Feng spread his hands and curled his lips and said, "I don't have this hobby." Mag, who was comforting Ginny, glanced at the basilisk and said, "We can leave the mirror space after the basilisk's eyes lose their magic power." Seeing that Li Feng didn't understand how to tell that the basilisk's eyes had lost their magic power, Mag added, "Just look at the luster of the basilisk's eyes. As long as the snake's pupils are dim and lose their luster, it means it has lost its petrifying effect on you and Ginny. Then we can leave the secret room." Li Feng nodded, indicating that he understood. Just like when a doctor in a hospital initially determines whether a patient is dead, he only needs to open his eyelids and look into the patient's eyes to understand. If it were other creatures, Li Feng said that he had a better way to judge whether the opponent was dead. Only this kind of basilisk with long nerve reflexes, he said that he couldn't see it with his magical eyes. Who knew that when he accidentally admired the snake's eyes, could the basilisk's nervous system suddenly have a seizure, turning him to stone? After a long time, Mag saw that the snake eyes had lost their luster, and glanced at Snape vaguely. When Snape nodded slightly, Mag signaled Li Feng to open the portal, and led Ginny, who was in a relatively stable mood, out of the mirror space. After Li Feng left the mirror space, he picked up Tom's notebook as soon as possible. Then he smacked his lips and planned around the basilisk with great interest. He kept asking Snape behind him, "Brother, what do you mean about snakes? What's the material of this snakeskin?" "Poor guy." Snape raised the corner of his mouth slightly and said with a sneer, "Not very good. Let's not talk about how troublesome it is to deal with snakeskin as rough as toad skin. Let's talk about the color of this snakeskin. You definitely want to make it into leather clothing. What? Also, I have to remind you that there is a kind of clothing in the world called dragon skin coat, which is much better than snake skin, and after years of research, dragon skin is easy to process and has various styles." Quote. Li Feng's movement of stroking the snake skin froze. "Ma Dan, I have forgotten that there are dragons in this world." No wonder Harry ignored this fat snake after killing the basilisk. Harry is a second-generation rich man with a rich family, and he is really good at this. Order the snake skin. As for the snake meat, I don't dare to eat it anyway. Snake blood and snake venom are still good materials, Snape said while taking out a glass test tube from his pocket. "If you have props, you can collect some like me and use them to make certain potions." Li Feng saw Snape holding a test tube the size of his thumb in one hand and using his wand to guide the basilisk's blood into the test tube. However, the glass test tube seemed like a bottomless pit, and no matter how much the snake blood was filled, it would not overflow. As expected of an expert in refining medicine, he carries a test tube with the traceless telescopic charm with him. Seeing that Snape was determined not to give up until the snake's blood was drained, Li Feng said a little speechlessly, "Please save some snakes. Give me the blood, I still want the materials." Snape glanced at Li Feng, nodded, put away the test tube, and walked towards Snake Fang to collect some snake venom. When he seemed to recall something, he slightly raised the corner of his mouth and smiled. "Dumbledore said you took a batch of small items belonging to the little snake. Sirius gold galleons, but also the house elf that symbolizes nobility." Li Feng frowned. Although he knew that Snape and Sirius were not dealing with each other, and Snape's happiest thing was to see Sirius and others frustrated, but now there is neither a cafe for us to sit down and chat, nor the time to chat. I also want to wait until you leave to ask Creature to come over to slice up the freshly baked basilisk and have a good chat with Tom. Creature is indeed my servant now, Li Feng said while thinking about Snape's purpose of still staying in the secret room, but that is the reward I deserve. As for Jin Gallon, Sirius had originally said to move it depends on my own ability. Since I have no ability, of course Jin Gallon is mine. After collecting the snake venom in the test tube, Snape smiled and put the test tube in his pocket. However, Snape had the attribute of facial paralysis. In Li Feng's eyes, his smile was just a smile, and he felt evil no matter how he looked at it. Empty. Dumbledore didn't tell me this. If he didn't tell me, Austin would secretly use his weird portal to return to Sirius's house and evacuate the gold galleons, causing Dumbledore not to know now. Maybe I will contact Dumbledore personally later, and it would be best to see with my own eyes what Sirius would look like when he knew that his galleons had been evacuated, Snape said thoughtfully. Why did you only move the gold galleons? You should have emptied his basement. Li Feng spread his hands and said, I want to, but I don't have the ability, especially those magic books. I don't dare to touch them easily given my strength. Snape, who wanted to make sure that Li Feng had the ability to enter and leave the Black House at any time, pointed to himself and said, do you need help? If you want to empty Sirius's basement, I will be happy to help you empty it. What's the use of emptying it? You can't help me analyze the magic. Li Feng shook his head and said, forget it, let Sirius keep it for me for a while, and then I can get it when I am strong enough. After chatting with Snape for a while, an owl with a letter in its mouth flew in front of Snape, put down the letter, turned around and flew away. Snape opened the letter and read it, then burned it. After glancing at the notebook in Li Feng's hand, he walked out of the secret room and said, Dumbledore has replied. Although he chose to believe you, I will still keep an eye on you. Quote. This change of attitude is a bit quick, we were having a good chat just now. Li Feng picked up the notebook, looked at it, and said, you've been talking nonsense to me for a long time just to delay waiting for Dumbledore to reply to you. Snape neither nodded nor spoke, and left the secret room on his own. There was only a slight pause in his steps, which told Li Feng, you were right. Feeling a little speechless, Li Feng shrugged and reached out to open the portal to the leaky cauldron. On the other side of the portal, Creature, who had already transcribed the time converter data and was lying on the desk to check whether the transcribed content was correct, said, come here and help. Although Snape said that dragon skin was better than snake skin, Li Feng said that he didn't have gold galleons to buy dragon skin clothes now, and he would be sorry if he didn't make good use of the materials left by the basilisk. Even though the flesh and blood on the basilisk's back had been blown to pieces by Mag and Snape using magic, there were still a lot of good materials left. Even highly poisonous things like snake teeth could be exchanged for money if they were sold. Less gold galleons. There is also snake gallbladder, but Li Feng doesn't know if the basilisk has this thing. If it does, it is probably worth a lot of money, especially since the basilisk in front of him is not the one that was blinded by the phoenix in the movie, but is it a basilisk with a complete eyeball, or two complete eyeballs? Most of the basilisk's ability lies in its snake eyes. These snake eyes are worth a lot of money. It's just that Li Feng thinks that he doesn't have the skills to collect it, so if it gets damaged, he will suffer a big loss. So after Creature crossed the portal, Li Feng immediately asked, Creature, can you decompose the basilisk? Creature was a little confused when he saw the huge basilisk. He clearly remembered that Li Feng had told him that there were still basilisks in this world, but he didn't expect that he would see a basilisk so soon, and it was still a freshly slaughtered one. Basilisk. When Creature heard Li Feng's question, he hesitated and said, Boss, I'm not very good at alchemical decomposition techniques. If you just treat the basilisk as food for me to decompose, I'll be confident enough to try it. Break it down, after all, my cooking skills are pretty good. Li Feng thought for a while and asked, can you cook a basilisk? Creature shook his head and said, no, I can only boil and roast snakes, but this basilisk looks like a big snake no matter what, I don't mind giving it a try. I mind if the name of this thing is a basilisk, but it's not a snake. Li Feng speechlessly rejected Creature's suggestion and said, can you preserve the basilisk? For example, freeze it or something, and wait until we find a buyer to thaw it. Creature said it's as simple as buying a broiler chicken home, only to find you can't eat the whole one and refrigerate half of the chicken. Li Feng's eyes twitched slightly when he saw that Creature always regarded the basilisk as a kind of food. He always felt a little weird. It seems that I have to explicitly prohibit Creature from cooking some messy food for me. At Li Feng's instruction, Creature froze the basilisk into an ice sculpture and kept it in the secret room. It's not that Li Feng doesn't want to take it away, but with such a big basilisk, he has no place to hide it unless his coffin-like suitcase is emptied. As for the shrinking spell unique to this world, even though the basilisk has already burped, Creature said that the basilisk is a basilisk, and its magic resistance will be weakened a lot after death, but he still didn't care. And what about Li Feng? His old man has never seriously learned the magic of Harry's world, so where did he get the technology to shrink the basilisk? The two of them hurriedly preserved the basilisk body, and Li Feng opened the portal back to the leaky cauldron. Shrinking the magic book on the desk to the size of a matchbox and putting it in his pocket, Li Feng asked Creature to bring a snake tooth certificate as evidence and said, "Can you contact a buyer who is willing to buy the basilisk?" Seeing Creature nodding and taking the snake fang, indicating that he could do it, Li Feng returned to the secret room with the tent and food. Looking at the extremely dark secret room, Li Feng strenuously hung some magic lamps around. After lighting up the secret room, Li Feng opened the mirror space while gnawing bread, threw Tom's notebook into the mirror space, turned around and carved a pattern on the ground. Merlin's ring to restore mana as quickly as possible. After a long time, Li Feng, who had recovered his magic power, entered the mirror space with a quill. Li Feng, who entered the mirror space, put the wooden box containing the pseudo-angel feather aside. After thinking about it, he felt that Tom had absorbed Ginny's vitality, and he probably had the ability to transform out of the notebook now. He also carved some magic circles on the ground to restrain ghosts. Afterwards, Li Feng held a fang of a basilisk in his left hand and a feather pen in his right hand and wrote crookedly on the notebook, "Do you still have the strength to come out and talk?" Tom, who was hiding in the notebook, was a little confused. Li Feng wrote American English, which was different from the words Tom was familiar with. If Tom hadn't been a little talented, he really didn't understand what Li Feng wrote. However, even though he understood it, Tom was still a little hesitant about whether to chat with Li Feng rashly. After all, he still understood the principle of those who come with bad intentions. After writing the text, Li Feng saw that the notebook had no reaction. Without thinking, he put the wooden box on the notebook, opened a small gap and said, "Check the water meter, come out to pay the water bill for me, otherwise don't blame me for poking you with snake teeth." After speaking, Li Feng gently scratched a page of paper with the sharp snake teeth. Inside the notebook, when Li Feng opened the wooden box, Tom felt like someone had peeled him clean and thrown him into boiling water to cook him. Unfortunately, he was just a remnant soul, and he couldn't leave the notebook. He had nowhere to escape and could only watch the radiation of the pseudo-angel feather. When Li Feng scratched the notebook with his snake teeth, Tom was so scared that he endured the severe pain in his soul and wrote on the notebook, "Take the box away." Li Feng glanced at the text, and wrote with a playful look, "Come out and chat, mainly because your chat software is too useless, there is not even a voice function, and you have to rely on the ancient typing to chat. Be careful, I will give you a bad review, and don't you know that I haven't held a pen since I graduated from high school? I can only recognize words, but as for writing, I really forgot how to write some words for a while." And watching Li Feng write a bunch of nonsense, for some reason, Tom suddenly felt that he had the courage to face death. At least after death, he wouldn't have to read such ugly words, and he could be quiet. When Li Feng was about to lose patience and was about to pack up and leave the mirror space, the crooked words appeared on the notebook again. "Who are you?" Li Feng looked at his own words, and then at the words written by Tom, and felt inexplicably proud. "Look who else said my handwriting was ugly, isn't there a guy who wants to compete with me to see whose handwriting is uglier?" Li Feng didn't think about it. Tom is still being exposed to the sun by the pseudo-angel feathers, his hands are shaking, it's strange that he can write beautiful words. However, Li Feng didn't want to chat with text. Since the other party was too disdainful to show up to chat, Li Feng didn't know what politeness was. He picked up the snake tooth and tore off a page of notes, saying, "Either come out and chat, or I'll send you to Dumbledore. I've given you the opportunity, it depends on whether you can grasp it. By the way, I remind you, I have the means to revive corpses." Before Li Feng finished speaking, a transparent residual soul with only the upper body emerged from the notebook. Looking at the young man whose lower body seemed to be stuck in the notebook, Li Feng smiled and said, "Other Voldemorts lie on the ground to avoid the enemy's sight, but you hide your lower body in the notebook. This hiding skill, should I say it is worthy of being Voldemort?" Tom didn't know Voldemort's jokes, and now he didn't have time to ask about it. After looking at the pseudo-angel feathers that made him miserable, he said with trembling lips, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" Li Feng grinned and closed the wooden box, saying, "Spells, teach me the Fiery Flame Curse." Fiery Flame is a flame with cursed power. It is a kind of magic fire that becomes stronger and stronger during the burning process. If the caster is strong enough, these flames can even be camouflaged into the form of some monsters, with stronger attack power. The disadvantage is that fiery flame is difficult to control. Once it gets out of control, it will chase all objects that can burn, including the caster, regardless of friend or foe. However, no matter how many shortcomings there are, it can't stop Li Feng's yearning. In the final analysis, all of this is due to Li Feng's own magic power that tends to be dark and fire attributes. Looking at Li Feng's current spells, they can basically be classified as white magic, with only a few black magics pried out from demons. Li Feng still has a partial understanding of these black magics and dares not use them easily, resulting in him not having powerful and suitable magic for himself. And the Fiendfire in Harry's world is simply tailor-made for Li Feng, with both fire attributes and dark magic. Tom, who closed the wooden box and stopped shivering, was a little confused. Fiendfire is one of the few magics that can destroy Horcruxes. The person in front of him asked him for the Fiendfire spell directly. He subconsciously thought that the person in front of him wanted to destroy him, but after glancing at the page in Li Feng's hand, Tom understood that the other party had other means to kill him. Considering that Li Feng had not yet killed himself, Tom nodded slightly and said in a magical voice, "Okay, but how can you make me believe that you won't kill me afterwards?" Li Feng, who sensed that Tom was using some means to seduce him, was speechless. "Compared with me, you are still a little naive." Shrugged, Li Feng ignored Tom's little tricks and said, "That's your business. At worst, I can find someone else to learn the fiery curse. You are not the only one who knows the fiery curse. I think most wizard families with many years of inheritance know this kind of magic, such as the Black family." After speaking, Li Feng looked at the pensive Tom with interest and said with a smile, "Let me remind you, I have many ways to kill you and torture you. For example, this space is actually a different space attached to reality. There is no such thing as mine. Permit, your parasitic notebook cannot be replenished by external magic power, so even if I do nothing, as long as I leave you here, I can let you taste the feeling of being erased by time. This kind of knowledge that you will die, but there is no a taste of resistance." Throwing away the wooden box in his hand, Li Feng continued, "There is also the wooden box in my hand. I think you should understand the power of the contents in it. Just a little bit of the power will be enough to make you feel comfortable." Quote. Li Feng ignored his own bewitching behavior and the other party's constant threats, which made Tom sullen. He had a stronger method of bewitching, but that would require a magic wand or long-term contact with Li Feng. As for now, he admitted that he could not shake him. Li Feng. At the same time, Tom also guessed that Li Feng's goal was not just as simple as Li Huo. After all, Li Feng had said that there were many ways to learn from Li Huo, and he was not inferior to his own, and since the other party was chatting with him in a hidden different space, it means that you have something that the other person needs, or something that cannot be discovered by others. But what else do you have besides knowledge now? Does the other party want a remnant soul to be a servant? Or a remnant soul who can't even serve tea and pour water? It's not as simple as the other person being idle and bored and looking for someone to chat with in the middle of the night to relieve their boredom. After thinking about it, Tom said hoarsely with some guessing, "The magic I know is not just Li Huo." "Did you guess my purpose?" Li Feng scratched his head and lamented that this fancy way of speaking really didn't suit him. After taking out the magic book, enlarging it and opening it, Li Feng held a quill in one hand and said, "Let's talk about the spell first, and then the details of the spell." Li Feng, who was afraid that Tom would set him up, said half intimidatingly and half seductively, "When I finish recording the spells, I will show them to Dumbledore for review. By the way, do you want to see the resurrection technique? I can let you see half of it first and the rest. I'll show you the next half when I learn how to do it." Tom's face froze when he heard about resurrection. When it came to resurrection, Tom knew many methods, but he wouldn't mind knowing one more method of resurrection. Originally, he was still considering whether to use Li Huo's characteristic of being indistinguishable between enemies and ourselves to kill Li Feng, but now, Tom thought it would be better to teach the opponent the Li Fire Curse first, and then talk about other things after the opponent's resurrection skills are obtained. After a long time, Tom, who had no source of magic power and became more transparent, finally taught Li Feng the spellcasting and precautions of Li Feng. Li Feng did not break his promise. After recording the Li Fire spell, he quickly turned the magic book to the page about resurrecting the corpse, handed it to Tom for inspection. Tom's eyes twitched slightly as he watched Li Feng cover the left half of the page with his big hand, revealing only the right half of the text's resurrection technique. If he hadn't had no means to deal with Li Feng, he would have really wanted to step on Li Feng's face and ask, "Is this what you are talking about?" Half of it, can't even see half of a complete sentence. Li Feng didn't care what Tom thought, anyway, this was half of what he said, and he still couldn't tolerate the half of Tom's rebuttal. Li Feng looked at Tom, who had a resentful look on his face, with an expression of, "Do you want to read it or not?" and said, "Don't want to read it. Then get back into your notebook and I will take you out of the mirror space." If it weren't for Li Feng's pressure, Tom would never have thought of showing up and chatting with Li Feng with his mouth. After all, hiding in a notebook and chatting in writing consumes completely different magic power than getting out of the notebook. So when he heard that he could leave the mirror space to replenish his magic power, Tom no longer cared about only half of the resurrection technology and went back to the notebook without thinking. Anyway, it was useless for him to see half of it, so he might as well go back to the notebook and rest. After crossing the portal, Li Feng simply moved his hands and feet to open the portal to the leaky cauldron. He was very busy that night. First, he inexplicably participated in the snake-killing operation, then he was busy working on the materials for the basilisk, and finally he asked Tom for advice on how to cast the fire curse. Now, Li Feng could finally relax when he returned to the room. He was too tired and didn't take off his clothes, just covered himself with the quilt and fell asleep. This sleep lasted until the afternoon of the next day, until Li Feng's intestines and stomach couldn't bear the fact that his master had not eaten for a day, and he felt that his idle stomach began to make noises out of boredom. Only then did Li Feng have to open his sleepy eyes, rub his belly and say, "Clay, come on, bring me some food, I feel like I can eat a dragon." "Yes, boss." Creature, who had already prepared a table of rich food, quickly placed the food on the desk and said, "Boss, the money you gave me to buy the ingredients has been spent." Li Feng, who was reincarnated as an evil spirit, stuffed his mouth with food and said inarticulately, "I will give you some more later. When we sell the basilisk, we will have enough money to maintain our lives." Creature returned the snake fang to Li Feng and said, "Boss, I have helped you contact several buyers, but they don't want people to know that they purchased the basilisk carcass. They want to talk to you privately and let me convey it to you. By the way, when are you going to take the basilisk out of Hogwarts and let them see it?" Li Feng thought for a while, "Determine the buyer first. Then I will use the portal to deliver the goods directly to the designated location. In this way, no one will know who the buyer is." As night fell, Li Feng, wearing a black cloak, held a cup and wore a golden wildflower on his chest, opening the portal to Hogsmeade Village. After crossing the portal, Li Feng, led by Creature, walked into the Pig's Head Bar, the place designated by the buyer who offered the highest price for the basilisk. At first, Li Feng was still wondering why the other party was still talking in a crowded place like a bar when he clearly asked for a secret transaction, until Creature told Li Feng that hiding your face in the Pig's Head Bar was a very fashionable thing, and most of the guests there wore hoods or veils. It can be said that as long as you dress up, no one can recognize you. In this regard, Li Feng said that he could not understand some of the weird behaviors in this world. He had to hide his identity when drinking a little wine. Was he afraid that his wife would rush into the bar and pull his ears in the middle of the night? At the same time, Li Feng thought for a long time and didn't understand why Creature asked him to bring a cup. "I haven't heard of bringing a cup to a bar to drink. What's the difference between this and being asked to bring your own seasonings to a restaurant? Is there no salt at home or something?" Walking into the narrow and dirty bar, Li Feng's first impression of the environment in the bar was not good. The whole bar had only one small and dirty room, and the air was filled with a strong smell of sheep. If Li Feng didn't like to eat mutton and was used to this smell, he would have to kneel down and vomit as soon as he entered the bar. Frowning, Li Feng looked at several rough wooden tables. Although there were some candles on the table, the light was still dim. Li Feng guessed that sitting at such a dim table, it was estimated that the person sitting opposite him drinking with him was a man or a woman. There was also a thick layer of dust on the floor in the bar, especially the cups on the wine cabinet. Li Feng even saw a thick layer of dust in the cups. It is no exaggeration to say that a 400 milliliters cup can only be filled with 300 milliliters of wine now, because the remaining volume is occupied by dust. This is not drinking, it's more like drinking dust. Li Feng touched his cup and said to Creature speechlessly, "You asked me to bring my own cup because you were afraid that I would drink too much dust and cause indigestion." Creature blinked his eyes and nodded silently. This is one of the reasons. Perhaps Li Feng came a little early, and there was still some time before the agreed time. Creature walked into the bar and looked around and said, "Boss, Mr. Horace Slughorn hasn't come yet." Li Feng frowned, and reluctantly found a dusty corner to sit down, ordered a butterbeer and waited for the buyer to come. If Li Feng remembered correctly, Horace Slughorn was a bald old man in the world of fat people. He was greedy for pleasure and vain in character. He liked to associate with successful and important people, but he was not a bad person in his bones. The reason why Li Feng had an impression of Horace Slughorn was that this guy was Harry Potter's potion teacher in the 6th grade, and he was also a master of potion making and a rich man who could independently make the elixir, and gave the elixir as a reward to students without any care. The lucky potion is a strange little magic potion. Drinking it will bring good luck to the user, so it is also called the lucky potion. In fact, the lucky potion can only greatly improve the user's abilities in all aspects within 12 hours, and finally feel that everything goes well, but it does not really bring luck. But this effect alone is enough to make Li Feng envious, so when Li Feng was squandering gold galleons in Diagon Alley, he did think about buying a bottle of lucky potion, but the production process of this thing is too complicated, resulting in the lucky potion on the market being too scarce or being snapped up as soon as it appears. Such a potion that is in short supply, Li Feng may not be able to buy it no matter how many gold galleons he has. Unless Li Feng is determined to squat in front of the potion store every day, maybe one day he can buy the lucky potion. In view of Slughorn's potion making level and potion collection, Li Feng still attaches great importance to this transaction. The main reason is that Li Feng wants to ask Slughorn if there are any magic enhancing potions in his private collection of potions. If the other party has such potions, Li Feng does not mind exchanging with the basilisk, even if he adds some weight to get the potion, such as writing spells such as portals or mirror space on the exchange list. After all, compared with his own strength, what are these things? As long as he has the strength, Li Feng dares to rob the gods of some worlds. After taking a sip of inferior butterbeer, Li Feng said that this thing is called wine. It is obviously a sweet and hot drink. After swallowing the butterbeer in his mouth with difficulty, Li Feng ordered Creature to pour out the butterbeer and replace it with a glass of vodka or other strong liquor. Li Feng noticed that a wizard who was also wearing a black cloak and could not see his face and wearing a golden wildflower on his chest came in at the door of the bar. Li Feng lowered his head and whispered, "Creature, is that the person we are waiting for at the door?" Creature looked up and nodded. Slughorn also noticed the golden wildflower on Li Feng's chest when Li Feng noticed him. He walked quickly to Li Feng, glanced at Creature, and said to Li Feng in a low voice, "Hello, are you Mr. Austin?" Li Feng nodded and motioned the other party to sit down, and whispered, "Yes, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Slughorn." Slughorn glanced at the dusty chair, looked around nervously, patted his purse to indicate that he had brought money, shook his head slightly and said, "No need, let me see the body of the basilisk. If you are satisfied, we will trade on the spot." Li Feng shrugged, stood up and said, "I can't carry such a big basilisk with me." Pointing to the door of the bar, Li Feng continued, "Shall I take you to the place where the basilisk is stored now?" Slughorn frowned and thought about it. This was different from what he thought. Originally, he thought that the two of them completed the transaction in the bar, and then went back to their houses to find their respective mothers. He never expected that Li Feng would not be able to carry it with him. Basilisk. However, Slughorn believed that he still had some strength, and he also brought some potions with him just in case. He was not afraid of Li Feng's tricks, so he nodded and said, as the basilisk in Hogsmeade. Li Feng smiled mysteriously as he walked out of the bar, and said confusedly, yes and no, you will understand if you come with me. After a while, Li Feng led Slughorn to a corner and opened the portal to the basilisk chamber. Through the aperture of the portal, Slughorn looked at the huge and fresh basilisk in the portal in surprise. However, considering the unfamiliar portal magic, Slughorn still motioned to Li Feng to cross the portal first. Understanding that Slughorn was worried that he would be disadvantageous to him, he shook his head slightly and crossed the portal and said, Mr. Slughorn, you don't have to worry. Before Li Feng finished speaking, Dumbledore's voice came from the secret room, Good evening, Mr. Austen and Slughorn. Hearing Dumbledore's voice, Slughorn crossed the portal and opened his cloak first, and said with a little surprise and confusion, Dumbledore. Are you also here to buy the basilisk corpse? Li Feng was a little embarrassed when he saw Dumbledore. After all, he was neither a student nor a professor at Hogwarts. Strictly speaking, he was still an alien invader. If Dumbledore had cruelly knocked him down on the spot, Li Feng would have nowhere to complain. The most important thing is that Dumbledore didn't explicitly say that he would pretend he didn't see him when he saw him at Hogwarts, which made Li Feng a little embarrassed. While maintaining the power of the portal so that Li Feng could escape at any time, he showed an awkward yet polite smile and said, Good evening, Professor, why are you going out for a walk in the middle of the night? Dumbledore smiled at Li Feng and said, Snape told me about how you protected him and Professor McGonagall very well last night, allowing them to let go and kill the basilisk, Dumbledore said. Bullido looked at the corpse of the basilisk and continued, Please forgive the curiosity of an old man. I have only seen the basilisk in books, but I have never seen it in reality. When I learned that when there was a basilisk in wards, I was so curious that I couldn't sleep because of my poor sleep quality, so on the first night when I resumed my position as principal, I couldn't help but come and see the basilisk in the secret room. After speaking, Dumbledore looked at Slughorn and said, Old friend, from what you just said, do you think you are here to buy a basilisk? Slughorn frowned and nodded, and said, The news I got at the beginning was that a house elf was conveying that his master wanted to sell the basilisk. Considering that the people who can have house elves are nobles with status, no would be a liar, so I thought the basilisk belonged to this Mr. Austen. Speaking of this, Slughorn looked at Dumbledore and said, But from the consciousness in your words just now, it seems that this basilisk belongs to Hogwarts. Dumbledore turned his head and thought for a moment. It was not a wise choice to say that the basilisk belonged to Hogwarts. After all, Hogwarts was a school, and why would he want to keep an extremely dangerous basilisk on a campus? The Ministry of Magic has long wanted to intervene in Hogwarts affairs. Once it is publicly stated that the basilisk belongs to Hogwarts, doesn't this mean that the Ministry of Magic has an excuse to station in Hogwarts? Who knows if there are basilisks or other dangerous creatures in Hogwarts? Thinking of this, Dumbledore blinked at Li Feng and said, No, it is an intruder, but this is the trophy of Austen, Snape and McGonagall. Snape has already taken his share. But Mag didn't take her share of the loot, so. Dumbledore pointed at Li Feng and said, This Mr. Austen is only half the master of the basilisk. Li Feng, Ma Dan, Lao Dang is using Mag as an excuse to get benefits from me. Seeing half of the benefits in hand fly away, Li Feng, who felt heartbroken, gestured with his eyes to Dumbledore to come aside and have a chat. Dumbledore, who understood what Li Feng wanted to express, nodded slightly and signaled Slughorn to take a closer look at the product he wanted to buy, and then walked to the portal with Li Feng. Before Dumbledore could speak, Li Feng pointed to the portal and said faintly, I exchanged the portal with Professor McGonagall for the ownership of the basilisk. The silent Dumbledore looked at Li Feng quietly, neither agreeing nor objecting. Li Feng could probably guess a little about what Dumbledore wanted. One is the mirror space that Professor McGonagall has personally experienced, which is safe and comfortable. The other is Snape telling Dumbledore about Tom's notebook and seeing Tom appearing and disappearing. Dumbledore, who already knew the existence of Horcruxes, could not help but think about Horcruxes in his notebook, especially Ginny, the victim who had been controlled by Tom for a period of time. As the principal, Dumbledore would definitely care about Ginny's mental health. Ask some questions by the way. How likely is it that Dumbledore would know that the previous owner of that notebook was Tom, the student Voldemort? Li Feng, who knew that Dumbledore was not satisfied with the deal, thought for a moment, his eyes twitched slightly and he gritted his teeth and said, "Don't go too far. At most, I will teach McGonagall the mirror space." As soon as Li Feng finished speaking, Dumbledore, who saw that this was Li Feng's bottom line, hesitated for a moment and said with a smile, "I have no right to make the decision for Mag, but I will convey your deal to Mag." Hearing that Dumbledore did not continue to ask for the notebook, Li Feng was relieved and couldn't help but roll his eyes and said with disdain, "You said you can't make the decision for McGonagall. You don't want my spells, which I exchanged with you before. Fine, aren't you satisfied enough? That thing has helped you a lot." Dumbledore did not deny the effectiveness of the magic eye. He believed that he could find hidden magic items in a pile of debris, but it was difficult for him to find out which item among the pile of magic items was a Horcrux. So the other effects of the Dharma Eye aside, just being able to see the Horcruxes was enough to satisfy Dumbledore. This is like the original work in which Voldemort hid the locket, one of the Horcruxes, in a cave on an isolated island, put the locket into the bottom of a container, and then poured some magic into the container that would make people alive after drinking it. A potion that feels worse than death. You can only get the locket after drinking the potion. Later, Regulus, who decided to change his ways, took Creature to the cave. After he drank all the potion, he asked Creature to take the locket and leave, while he put the fake locket into the container and said goodbye to the world. It's a pity that Dumbledore didn't know everything Regulus did. Later, Dumbledore took Harry to the cave and drank the potion before discovering that it was a fake. It can be seen that Dumbledore is indeed unable to determine which magic item is a Horcrux, but it is different with the discernment. It is estimated that Dumbledore took one look at the fake locket and turned around and left without raising his head. We all know this thing is fake. Who would drink the potion, have a nervous convulsion or have nothing to do, and want to know whether the potion prepared by Voldemort tastes salty or light? But then again, the locket is already in Dumbledore's hands, so only a fool would go into the cave to find some Horcrux. Seeing that Dumbledore didn't mention the notebook, Li Feng, who had just put his heart back in his stomach, suddenly heard Dumbledore say quietly, "So, what do you want to say about the notebook?" Li Feng, "Notebook, you really don't talk about it." Before Li Feng could think of how to answer, Dumbledore, who suppressed his smile, continued, "I learned some information from Ginny, so let's make it clear. Who are you going to exchange the mysterious man's Horcrux with? Or, what do you want?" If Li Feng believed that he could not defeat Snape, he was sure to escape from the cooperation of Snape and Professor McGonagall by relying on the mirror space and the portal. It's just that the person standing in front of him with a straight face is Deng Li, whose strength is much higher than that of Snape. Especially since the distance between the two is so close that they can be ignored, Li Feng doesn't feel that he has a chance to escape. Li Feng glanced at the portal in front of him with a helpless face, and reluctantly closed the portal to show that he had no intention of running away, and said, "To be honest, I haven't thought about what to exchange for my notebook for the time being, but you don't worry, I have no interest in returning this thing to Voldemort. In my eyes, that guy is deeply infected with the rabies virus and a patient with severe mania." Dumbledore shook his head slightly and said, "But I don't trust leaving the notebook with you. After all, you may not know your strength. The mysterious man's Horcrux has the ability to confuse the mind, and you." Before Dumbledore could finish his words, Li Feng took out a wooden box from his pocket and threw it to him, and motioned for him to open it. Dumbledore glanced at Li Feng and slowly opened the wooden box. In an instant, Dumbledore felt a majestic magic emanating from the pseudo-angel feathers. What was especially important was that these majestic magic gave people a feeling of comfort and tranquility. Dumbledore, who understood what Li Feng wanted to express, closed the wooden box and returned it to Li Feng, saying, "Maybe you can resist the mysterious man's temptation in the short term with it, but what about the long term? You'd better tell me what you want. It also allows me to find what you are longing for in advance." Seeing that Dumbledore was determined to get Tom's notebook, Li Feng scratched his head, glanced at Slughorn in the distance, and said with an uncertain tone, "Originally, I discussed with Slughorn, can you exchange the basilisk and my spells for some magic amplification potions that can increase your magic power, or even some clues, but since you insist on asking for the notebook, then I will exchange it with you for the notebook." Dumbledore was stunned, looking at Li Feng as if with a bit of contempt, and said, "Do you know how precious the magic amplification potion is? Even those big families that have been passed down for thousands of years may not be able to come up with a bottle. Even if they have, if I agree to trade with you, I won't be able to exchange half a bottle for a living and obedient basilisk, let alone a completely dead one, but... Looking at Slughorn circling around the basilisk, Dumbledore turned his head and looked at Li Feng with a, "You're lucky," look, and said, "Slughorn does have a magic amplification potion in his hand. Considering the importance of the notebook, I will ask Slughorn for a bottle for you, but the basilisk must belong to Slughorn. As for your spells, Slughorn is not obsessed with spells, so you should keep the spells. I will provide the rest of the materials. It's considered a trade of notebooks with you." After speaking, Dumbledore turned and walked towards Slughorn, and said to Li Feng behind him, "You step aside first. I have some private matters to discuss with Slughorn. I will officially start teaching you magic later." Li Feng nodded, turned around and opened the portal to return to the Leaky Cauldron, preparing to pack Creature and his luggage and take them back to the Chamber of Secrets. As for what Dumbledore talked to Slughorn about, Li Feng guessed that Dumbledore just wanted to know where Tom learned to make Horcruxes. After a long time, Li Feng, who had checked out and packed his luggage, felt that Dumbledore should have finished talking to Slughorn, so he reached out to open the portal to the Chamber of Secrets and prepared to settle down in the Chamber of Secrets with Creature. After entering the Chamber of Secrets, Li Feng found that the bodies of Slughorn and the basilisk had disappeared, and even Dumbledore, who was supposed to be waiting for Li Feng in the Chamber of Secrets, was nowhere to be seen. To be honest, Dumbledore's tough attitude towards the notebook made many of Li Feng's plans fail, the most direct of which was the plan to learn magic from Tom. The only comfort was that the most desired Fiendfire was already in hand, and the only thing missing was who to ask for advice when encountering problems in actual casting. Seeing that Dumbledore was not in the secret room, Li Feng thought for a moment and said to Creature, who was busy tidying up the secret room, "Creature, help me find a textbook signed by the Half-Blood Prince in a certain potion classroom in Hogwarts from a bookcase or a cabinet, a textbook on how to make potions." After thinking for a moment, Li Feng added, "I remember that this textbook is a bit old. If you really don't know which one I'm looking for, bring back all the textbooks related to potions." After that, Li Feng opened the mirror space, ready to squeeze Tom again while the notebook was still in his hand. As soon as he entered the mirror space, Li Feng hurriedly held the wooden box and wrote on the notebook, "Come out quickly." Tom, who had recovered some magic power, silently felt the energy radiation of the pseudo-angel feathers, and helplessly showed a head from the notebook. There was no way. Tom had only so much magic power left, and it was good enough to be able to transform a head. It was estimated that when Li Feng summoned him in such a hurry next time, he could only transform his upper and lower lips to communicate. Tom said with an innocent face, "What's the matter again?" Li Feng rubbed his hands, pretended to open the wooden box and threatened, "What magic are you most proud of? Give it to me." Tom was stunned, feeling that Li Feng was a little anxious this time, and narrowed his eyes and asked, "Did something happen?" "Why so much nonsense?" Li Feng opened most of the wooden box, letting the pseudo-angel feathers weaken Tom's willpower as much as possible, and said in a tone containing strange mana fluctuations, "Answer my question." Tom knew that Li Feng was casting a spell on him, but he didn't have much magic power, and he didn't see Li Feng holding a magic wand and was a little relaxed. He didn't have time and couldn't make effective resistance. When he regained consciousness from his trance, he saw Li Feng grinning and quickly recording something in the magic book. With little magic power left, Tom, whose head was almost completely transparent, trembled and glanced at the magic book, and the pupils in his eyes shrank. Li Feng recorded his most proud magic, which was the dark mark, magic he used to control and restrain the Death Eaters. In the movie, when Voldemort touched the dark mark of other Death Eaters would also feel it, and they would immediately appear beside Voldemort to obey his orders. When a Death Eater touched the dark mark, branded on his left arm, Voldemort could also feel the call and apparate to the other party. Li Feng did not expect that Voldemort would know the dark mark when he was a student, and through Tom's detailed explanation, Li Feng understood that the role of the dark mark was not just a function similar to the phone in the movie, it was more like a slave contract, which allowed Voldemort to firmly control the Death Eaters when he was strong. Of course, if Voldemort was weak, the effect of the dark mark would be greatly weakened. However, Li Feng did not care about these shortcomings. he still had the devil's slave contract in his hand. As long as Li Feng spent some time studying, it would not be impossible to merge the dark mark and the slave contract to create a unique means of control. In the mirror space, Tom seemed to understand his fate. Just when Li Feng was about to release his seduction spell on him again, he hid in his notebook and refused to show up, acting like a man who could be killed but not humiliated. Li Feng had no choice but to kill Tom to relieve his anger. Li Feng said that it was no problem and could be done easily. But how could Dumbledore believe that the notebook was a Horcrux after killing Tom? Li Feng said he was not sure. Maybe Dumbledore-Li duo would also suspect that Li Feng randomly took a worn-out notebook to fool him. There is no way. Li Feng can only form a stalemate with Tom in the notebook. When Dumbledore appeared in the secret room again, Li Feng, who had not recorded a few magic spells, returned to reality with an aggrieved look on his face. He reluctantly handed the notebook to Dumbledore and said, "I feel like I've lost a lot. If you can compensate me with some money, long." When Dumbledore took the notebook, he handed Li Feng a bottle of glass gourd the size of a baby's fist and said, "But I think you made a lot of money. If it weren't for Slughorn's recent obsession with using basilisks to make potions to improve his health, reputation, he won't give me the magic power enhancement potion so easily." Li Feng took the glass gourd, held it in front of his eyes by the firelight, and watched the dreamlike scene inside the potion. I saw that the small gourd seemed to contain a Milky Way galaxy, and the light blue potion was shining with little stars. These light spots slowly rotated around the brightest star in the center. Li Feng glanced vaguely at the notebook in Dumbledore's hand, and then at such a beautiful magic potion. He felt a little reluctant to drink it. After admiring it for a while, he reluctantly asked, "Professor, is there an instruction manual for this thing? Just give me the potion and let me use it. Should I drink it directly, take a bath, or eat it with some bread?" After hearing Li Feng's nonsense, Dumbledore, who was studying his notebook with his wand, almost stumbled and slapped the notebook in his hand towards Li Feng. Dumbledore looked at Li Feng thoughtfully. After recalling Li Feng's information, he suddenly understood something and said, "Is your nonsense a way to divert my attention and ease my mood?" Li Feng, who was originally smiling playfully, stiffened. Seeing this, Dumbledore smiled and raised his notebook with one hand, and asked in a gentle tone, "It seems that you have communicated with Tom. Tell me what deal you made with Tom. I'm very worried. I'm curious as to what a wizard from the outside would have in common with the Dark Lord of our world." The expression gradually solidified on Li Feng's face. He knew not to look at Dumbledore, who had a smile on his face and a gentle tone, but he knew that if he didn't speak clearly, Dumbledore would probably have many ways to imprison him. Li Feng understood why Dumbledore treated him differently when he came into contact with Tom. If an ordinary person came into contact with Tom, the consequences would be nothing more than being bewitched and obeying Tom's orders. It's amazing that there are just one more Death Eaters in the world, an ordinary Death Eater. Dumbledore can still ignore it. But Li Feng is different. First of all, Li Feng comes from other civilizations. Unfortunately, in Dumbledore's eyes, he is a guy who likes to trade with magic. Who knows that Li Feng will not use any special magic to trade with Tom? Originally, when Dumbledore faced the familiar Tom, he was not completely sure of destroying him. Once Tom mastered the new and unknown spells, he did not think that he would be able to immediately come up with a cracking spell when facing these spells, or even crack it. The existence of a curse is a problem. So for the sake of the peace of the magical world, why not bear the crime of murder? Do you really think Dumbledore doesn't know how to kill? Thinking of this, Li Feng thought silently, "I hope that Lao Dang will be lenient if I confess and be lenient if I resist, as in the original work." While preparing the spell secretly, Li Feng took a deep breath and slowly exhaled it. With a bitter look on his face, he took out the magic book from his pocket, turned to the page that recorded the fire spell, and said, "I don't know if you sense my spell. Magic is biased towards darkness, but the magic I have always learned is biased towards white magic. It's not that I don't want to learn black magic, but there is no source to learn it from." Dumbledore glanced at the fire curse, frowned and said, "What magic did you use to exchange the fire curse with Tom?" Li Feng shook his head and said with a smile, "Do you still remember my evaluation of Voldemort? Mad Dog and Manic Patient, Although Dumbledore felt that Li Fang's description was a bit inappropriate, describing Voldemort this way still made him laugh. I still remember you said you would not trade with him. Yes, Li Fang shrugged and said, so I used that feather to threaten Tom and asked him to teach me magic, but, with some regret, Li Fang said faintly, but your insistence on getting the notebook back made me there is no time to learn more magic. Dumbledore looked at Li Fang seriously, wanting to make sure whether Li Fang had told him the truth. After a while, he put the notebook back in his arms and said, let's start our magical journey. By the way, just drink the magic potion to increase the power. Potion, your magic power will increase rapidly in the near future, and the amount of increase depends on your own qualifications. Quote. Li Fang shook the potion in his hand, pulled out the stopper and poured it into his mouth. After drinking it, he smacked his lips and said, I drank it too fast and I didn't taste the saltiness. Can you have some more? I feel like the amount is too little, not enough. Quench your thirst. Dumbledore ignored Li Fang's talk, took out a self-compiled Introduction to Magic, and said, I don't have much time to teach you. For the time being, it will be after dinner every Saturday. Handing the textbook to Li Fang, Dumbledore continued, although you have not learned magic in our world, I think magic is magic, and there are some similarities, so my teaching speed will be a bit fast. I hope you can take good notes. If you encounter any questions you don't understand, you can ask me every Saturday night. Li Fang, who restrained his smile, took the Introduction to Magic with both hands and said respectfully, thank you, I hope I am the fastest learner in your teaching career. Dumbledore nodded and smiled. He is also the only person who became my student after adulthood. From the origin of magic to the development of magic in modern times, Dumbledore demonstrated magic while introducing the principles of releasing magic in detail until the early morning. Dumbledore couldn't help yawning and said, let's stop here today. After all, I am old and I don't have the energy to stay up late like you. Hearing that today's magic teaching was over, Li, who was still unsatisfied, Fang bowed to Dumbledore and said, thank you. Dumbledore accepted Li Fang's greeting with a clear conscience, smiled and said, by the way, Lupin wrote to me and asked me to ask him that he has prepared some materials for motorcycle modification. When will you learn the technology of motorcycle modification from him? Li Fang thought about it and felt that it was a pity to leave Hogwarts, a feng shui treasure land. In addition, he had already used the magic enhancement potion, which made him want to stay in an environment with high magic concentration to improve his strength. He said, rest tonight, and I will pick up Lupin to teach me in the Chamber of Secrets tomorrow. Dumbledore heard that Li Fang didn't want to leave Hogwarts, but he didn't object. He nodded and said, okay, when you pick up Lupin tomorrow, please help me convey a message to Sirius and ask him to pay attention to safety in the near future. Li Fang was stunned, and then he thought that the matter of the basilisk had been revealed, and Hagrid, the scapegoat of Amag Kaban, should be released. Those Ministry of Magic staff who went to Amagaba with the release certificate would most likely find that Sirius had escaped from prison. It is estimated that wanted pictures of Sirius would soon be posted all over the streets. At this time, Sirius going out would be no different from seeking death. Li Fang nodded to indicate that he would convey the message, and then yawned and pretended to be sleepy, watching Dumbledore leave the Chamber of Secrets with his own eyes. After a while, Li Fang, who was sure that Dumbledore would not return, ordered Creature to seal the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, and carved Merlin's magic ring with his big mouth showing his back teeth. When the spirit was meditating out of the body, Li Fang had analyzed the principle of the magic amplification potion. Magic or energy is like food. How much you can eat depends on how much food your stomach can hold. You can only continue to eat after digesting the food and converting it into energy and storing it in your body. Normally, the amount of food for 3 meals a day is basically fixed. Unless you are a big eater with outstanding qualifications, you can eat a lot of food at a time to allow your body to absorb more energy. The magic potion is like a digestion pill, which can speed up digestion and convert food into energy faster, which can speed up your food intake and make you a big eater for a period of time. Li Fang, who ate energy for a night, meditated for a night, had to stop practicing until he felt that meditation would not only not improve magic power, but would damage the foundation. After the spirit returned to the body, Li Fang immediately hid the Merlin magic ring. It is simple and quick for Li Fang to draw the Merlin magic ring now, but at the same time, with Dumbledore's knowledge, he would understand the principle after a few glances. Li Feng didn't want to give Dumbledore a bargain for nothing. As for the other party wanting to learn, it is not impossible, just exchange resources. He is now a poor guy whose food expenses are almost cut off, and he lacks all supplies. After hiding the Merlin magic ring, Li Feng asked Creature to prepare food while closing his eyes and carefully sensing his soaring magic power. After a while, Li Feng, who was sitting at the dining table, tried hard to resist the urge to yell, but he couldn't help but smile, and his mouth was twisted from time to time. Creature, who was standing by, saw Li Feng laughing like a pig when chewing food, and had to guess, seeing that this was the same symptom as when epilepsy occurred, it was probably that the owner was sick, and the illness was serious. To be honest, this was the happiest day for Li Feng since he traveled through time. Think about it, although he had obtained the time travel plugin before, Li Feng could only travel through the magical world. As a rookie with low strength, how much difference is there between the other world and the dangerous Marvel world? He could be crushed to death by any passing boss at any time. So Li Feng's mentality has always been to be careful, but today, when using the magic enhancement potion, Li Feng personally experienced what is the visible speed of strength improvement, and what is the achievement that can be achieved in one night with hard work in the past month. After breakfast, Li Feng slumped down at the dining table and burped. He rubbed his cheeks that were cramped from laughing and ordered Creature to prepare a special quill for translation. Worried that Creature would lose his temper when he returned to Black's old house, Li Feng warned, "Creature, remember your current identity." Creature froze, lowered his head and said, "Creature understands that Creature is the boss's house elf, and it is my duty to serve the boss." Seeing that Creature understood his consciousness, Li Feng stood up and opened the portal. After crossing the portal and arriving at the dining room of Black's old house, Li Feng watched silently as Sirius and Lupine sat face to face. As if they were looking in a mirror, they picked up the water glass with one hand and drank it, and then put the bread to the table with the other hand simultaneously. Gag in mouth. I don't know why, but seeing the two of them sitting opposite each other like lovers, with similar expressions and simultaneous eating movements, a question suddenly popped up in Li Feng's mind. One can turn into a wolf and the other can turn into a dog. These are the two of them. Dude, if there was a man and a woman who loved each other, what would their offspring be called? When Sirius saw the portal, he already knew that Li Feng was coming. He hurriedly stuffed the last piece of bread into his mouth and spat out saliva at Li Feng with excitement. "You despicable thief, how dare you step into my house?" Li Feng glanced at the other person and subconsciously took a few steps back to avoid saliva sticking to his clothes. After confirming that Sirius did not have a wand in his hand, Li Feng scratched his head and asked Lupine, who was preparing to watch the show, "What's wrong with him? Is he rabid?" Lu Ping's eyes twitched. He pointed to the floor towards Li Feng, and walked in front of the increasingly agitated Sirius, just in case Sirius couldn't stand the stimulation and jumped on Li Feng. Li Feng first looked at the floor in confusion and suddenly said, "Jin Gallon in the basement." Spreading his hands, Li Feng looked at Sirius with innocent eyes and said, "You can't blame me for this. You said you can take as much as I can. Since I have the ability to empty it, you can't blame me." When Sirius heard Li Feng talking to him in a natural tone, he angrily pointed at Li Feng's nose and shouted loudly, "Duel, I want to duel with you." Li Feng takes seriously a wizard who doesn't even have a magic wand. Li Feng immediately held a basketball-sized fireball in his right hand, hooked his fingers at Sirius with his left hand, and returned arrogantly, come on, who is afraid of who? Since you don't even have a magic wand, to be fair, we are here without any hesitation." Duel of Wands. Sirius, Lupine. The two looked at each other speechlessly and then looked at the fireball on Li Feng's palm. Who doesn't know who's behind now? Li Feng is not from this world. It makes no difference to him whether he has a wand or not. But as for Sirius, without a wand, what's the difference between him and ordinary people? Is this a duel? This is looking for abuse. Although Li Feng knew that the two would not really duel, after all, he knew that Sirius had Dumbledore as his backer, and Sirius also knew that he could not defeat Li Feng with the wand he did not have. Lu Ping still felt pain in his head while holding his forehead. Lu Ping, who was afraid that the two of them would continue to quarrel, pressed Sirius on the chair, turned to Li Feng and said, "Mr. Austin, I have prepared the materials for modifying the motorcycle, but you need to solve the problem of the teaching venue yourself." Quote. Originally, Lupin had thought of teaching Li Feng in the old black house, but looking at the postures of Sirius and Li Feng, it would be good to have a quiet rest in the old house. As for teaching, save it. Fortunately, Li Feng didn't want to stay in Blake's old house to practice his skills in renovating motorcycles. He said, "The venue problem is easy to solve. The place I live now is very good, spacious and quiet enough." Looking at Sirius, Li Feng Shanshan said, "When are you going to let me copy the books in the Black family collection?" Hearing that Li Feng was still thinking about the books in the basement, Sirius said angrily, "Don't you have free access to my basement? Why are you asking me for this? Let Creature copy it by himself." After saying that, Sirius turned around in anger and stopped looking at Li Feng. Thinking about it, even though he promised Li Feng that he would let the other party copy the books after confirming Pettigrew's information, he had not yet confirmed it, and he had quietly sneaked into the basement to copy the special copies. Anyone would be unhappy, and this was not the case. As long as the information given by Li Feng was correct, if it was false, Sirius said that he was not the one who could suffer a loss. "It's good if you can copy books." As for Sirius's attitude, Li Feng shrugged indifferently, turned around and handed the magic book to Creature, and said, "Copy all the contents as soon as possible, and mark those materials that cannot be copied temporarily for later. I will come back and continue copying when I am strong enough." After giving the order, Li Feng took a suitcase with a traceless telescopic spell engraved on it from Lu Ping. For some reason, Li Feng suddenly thought that a certain great god in this world had a suitcase similar to the one in front of him. The difference was that guy's the suitcase is like a zoo, and the space inside the suitcase is large enough to park an aircraft carrier. "I wonder if I can expand my cabin to accommodate a space carrier after I learn how to modify the car." After thinking about it in his mind, Li Feng patted the bulging box and said, "How many cars can I modify with these materials?" "How many cars?" Lupin said speechlessly. "It's only enough for one car. After all, according to your requirements, the material cost is not a small amount. In addition, you have emptied Sirius's gold galleons, so he doesn't have much money. Purchase these materials." The materials used for the traceless expansion spell to expand the interior space of the car occupy most of the box space, and the rest are flight and invisibility materials, but, Lupin glanced at Sirius and smiled, "I can teach you how to modify the first few things, but I don't understand the operating principle of the engine, which is the most important part of the flying car. So I can't do anything to modify the engine to use magic drive. You can only learn from Sirius, who was an expert in this field back then." As soon as Lupin finished speaking, Li Feng saw Sirius looking at him provocatively, his eyes full of the meaning of, "Come and beg me." Li Feng tilted his head and thought for a while, then smiled and said, "Dumbledore asked me to tell you that the Ministry of Magic will find out that you have escaped from Amazing Cabin soon, so you should stay at home." Li Feng stretched out his hand to open the portal, showing a mysterious smile, and said to Sirius, "Do you think that after the Ministry of Magic knows that you have escaped, will they guess that you escaped to kill Harry? And for the safety of Harry, the Savior, what extreme means do you think the Ministry of Magic will use to hunt you down? Want me to ask Sirius to teach me how to modify a car? Don't even think about it. I'm not a big guy like Dumbledore, who is afraid of who." After complaining, Li Feng ignored the silly Sirius and returned to the secret room with Lupin, who was squinting his eyes and thinking. After crossing the portal, Lupin kept guessing what Li Feng meant by excessive, and asked thoughtfully, "What did you mean just now? Did you see what will happen in the future?" Li Feng opened the suitcase, took the materials in his hands and played with them, and said, "It's meaningless, you will know when the time comes, you just need to know that Sirius will beg to teach me how to modify the car. Tell me what you are going to do after knowing the situation of Pettigrew." Lupin thought about it and felt that Li Feng wanted to stay in Hogwarts and practice magic. If he saw that Sirius would get into trouble, he would definitely not hide anything. After all, Dumbledore was still watching. The basilisk incident at school this year has made many students and parents panic. If the Pettigrew incident happens again recently, many students will probably transfer to other schools. So Dumbledore asked us to wait until Pettigrew leaves school during the summer vacation or until the basilisk incident subsides before we take action against Pettigrew. Lupin glanced at Li Feng and said faintly, I remember you called me Professor before, so you knew I would come to Hogwarts to teach defense against the dark arts, didn't you? When I enter Hogwarts next semester, I can better protect Harry and greatly increase the success rate of catching Pettigrew with my understanding of Pettigrew. After all, our goal is not to kill Pettigrew, but to capture him alive. Only by capturing Pettigrew alive and handing him over to the Ministry of Magic can Sirius clear his name and appear on the street in broad daylight to enjoy the sunshine. When talking about handing Pettigrew over to the Ministry of Magic, Lupin's face was obviously helpless and disgusted. Come to think of it, Sirius didn't even have an interrogation procedure back then. He was thrown directly into a magicabin, and he was thrown there for 12 years. In addition, the Ministry of Magic's attitude towards Dumbledore, as Dumbledore's die hard, it would be strange for Lupin to have a good face to the Ministry of Magic. Li Feng scratched his head. After all the fuss, it's back to the plot. Is this considered a revision of the world? Lupin took out a rusty beetle car with no doors and wheels from the suitcase, and Li Feng said disdainfully, Where did you find this scrapped car? Did you pick it up on the roadside? Lupin spread his hands, made a helpless gesture, and said, It's good to be able to pick up a car. I don't have the money to buy a new car for you to toss. While continuing to take out materials from the suitcase, Lupin pretended to ask unconsciously, How do you think the Ministry of Magic will treat Pettigrew? The premise of wanting to treat Pettigrew is that Pettigrew can't escape. I think Lupin has something to say. Li Feng touched his chin and asked, What do you know about Pettigrew? It's not Pettigrew. Lupin froze in his hand and said, It's the Ministry of Magic. I don't know what the laws are in your world, but in our world, Pettigrew is a hero. After Lupin's explanation, Li Feng gave the Ministry of Magic a thumbs up speechlessly. They are really cool. It was Pettigrew who betrayed the Potters and put the blame on Sirius, and at the same time, he pretended to be dead and escaped under the pretext of hunting Sirius. In the end, the Ministry of Magic thought he was a hero and gave Pettigrew a first-class Order of Merlin. Now, the Ministry of Magic cannot use force on Pettigrew, who has the first-class Order of Merlin, without solid evidence, such as injecting truth serum or something. The problem is that Pettigrew knew that he would die if he told the truth, so why did he still tell the truth? He could just stick to Sirius who killed the Potters. So Lupin sometimes thinks the same as Sirius now. Leave it to the Ministry of Magic and just kill Pettigrew. Li Feng said he was powerless about Pettigrew's matter. He was not a big shot in the political world who could make the Ministry of Magic throw Pettigrew directly into Amagaba. Could it be that Li Feng, as a wizard from another universe, had a business meeting with the Ministry of Magic and asked the Ministry of Magic to severely punish Pettigrew? Let's not talk about whether the Ministry of Magic believed Li Feng's words or not. Let's talk about what the other party would do after Li Feng revealed his identity. Either they would put Li Feng in a mental hospital, or they would respond to Li Feng's question with a large bottle of truth serum. If they confirmed that Li Feng was from another world, they would probably use Oblivion afterwards, then slice Li Feng up for research with a smile, and then announce to the wizards, New world, new journey, here we come. Lupin also knew that Li Feng was powerless to do anything about it, and just wanted to know what happened to Pettigrew with a glimmer of hope. Seeing that Li Feng refused to answer his questions, Lupin stopped asking, so that he would not ask anxiously. Li Feng would start talking about a deal again. He was so poor that he had not bought new clothes for several years and had to live in Sirius's house. Where would he get the gold galleons to ask questions? It would be better to be careful when arresting Pettigrew and find strong evidence. Since then, Li Feng's miserable life officially began. During the day, he learned the craft of modifying cars from Lupin, and at night he still learned the basics of magic from Lupin. On Saturday, Lupin could pat his butt and say he wanted to take a day off, while Li Feng was still studying miserably, asking Dumbledore all the questions he had accumulated in a week. It can be said that this period of time was both painful and happy for Li Feng. The pain was because Li Feng said that he was a poor student, and the rules were different in different worlds. Some theories that Li Feng thought were completely nonsense happened to be the truth in this world, which led to Li Feng's learning of skills and magic not being as fast as he imagined. Happiness is due to the rapid improvement of strength, especially with the help of the magic enhancement potion. When Li Feng, who had only the magic power of a senior grade when he first came to this world, waited for the students of Hogwarts to rush to the Hogwarts Express with their luggage and prepared to enjoy the happy time of summer vacation. Li Feng's total magic power had reached the total magic power that a normal wizard should have. Of course, after such a long time, the effect of the magic enhancement potion, no matter how powerful it is, should end. Dumbledore's teaching is also over. After all, he is the principal of a party, and it is the limit for him to teach Li Feng for a period of time. In this regard, Li Feng, who has enjoyed the surge in strength, said that he was dissatisfied and very unhappy, but he could do nothing about it. After all, the magic enhancement potion is rarer than the Felicity potion. In the words of Sirius, Li Feng can drink a bottle of magic enhancement potion in this life because he jumped into the Felicity potion and drowned in the last life. He is so lucky in this life. If he wants to drink another bottle, he probably has to soak in the Felicity potion for hundreds of years. On the first day of the Hogwarts holiday, Li Feng ordered Creature to clean up the Chamber of Secrets and prepare a pot of good tea before Snape left school, and then let the spirit float above the Merlin magic ring. However, compared with the past, the door of the Chamber of Secrets was open today. After a while, Snape, as always, had a stern face, wearing a large bat suit, and came to the Chamber of Secrets with an invitation letter from Li Feng. At the moment Snape stepped into the Chamber of Secrets, Li Feng, in spirit form, nodded slightly to greet him, indicating that he could observe the Merlin magic ring up close, while he continued to meditate. Snape was stunned when he saw Li Feng's spirit. After taking the teacup handed by Creature, he circled around the Merlin magic ring with interest and analyzed it, especially sensing the increase in magic power caused by Li Feng's meditation. There is no such thing as meditation for wizards in this world. The improvement of magic power depends entirely on talent and taking various potions. Therefore, compared with the Merlin magic ring, which is suspected to be a magic gathering circle in this world, Snape is more interested in Li Feng's meditation method. After a long time, Li Feng, who had ended his meditation early, controlled his spirit body back to his body, pointed at Merlin's magic ring, and said, "How is it?" Snape looked at Merlin's magic ring, shook the invitation letter in his hand, and said, "These are the 2 ways to quickly improve your strength mentioned in your letter." Li Feng nodded, waved to Snape and said, "I'll talk about the meditation method later. Now you can enter Merlin's magic ring and feel its charm." Merlin's magic ring. Merlin was not a fantasy character to Snape, but a real person. He had studied at Hogwarts, and the college he attended was Slytherin College, which he currently managed. In Snape's opinion, the magic gathering circle named after Merlin was not a common product. The effect of gathering magic might be better than he thought. But he didn't understand when Li Feng, who was stingy in his impression, became generous. This level of magic can be traded at will. When did his own potion learning become so valuable? In fact, Li Feng was forced to use meditation or Merlin's magic ring to negotiate a deal. In addition to coveting the magic knowledge of this world, he also wanted the knowledge of potions. For this reason, when he killed the basilisk, Li Feng even used the temptation spell on Snape and McGonagall. As a result, the 2 professors were not easy to deal with. They nodded in front of him and agreed to exchange knowledge for Li Feng's assistance. When the basilisk was killed and turned around, the 2 professors had already woken up from the temptation spell. It would be strange if the 2 professors would agree to the deal that they agreed to after being tempted by temptation. McGonagall's refusal had made Li Feng feel distressed for a while, and Snape's refusal made Li Feng regret it even more. What a fool he was at the beginning. Wouldn't it be perfect if he used magic to make the 2 sign the contract first and then kill the snake after temptation? Now he has to pay a greater price to learn potion knowledge from Snape. With confusion, Snape walked into Merlin's ring. After a while, Snape, who understood the power of Merlin's ring, said with a straight face, "Why are you looking for me? If I remember correctly, you have been talking to that idiot. The wolf is learning magic, and Dumbledore is as good at potions as I am." Li Feng spread his hands and said helplessly, "Dumbledore's teaching has ended. After all, he is a busy man. As for Lu Ping, it's not that he doesn't want to teach me, but how can his potion science compare with yours? Since he wants to learn potions, why don't I get it right in one step? Wouldn't it be better to learn from a potions master like you?" After speaking, Li Feng snapped his fingers and said, "Creature, bring me the Half-Blood Prince textbook." Hearing that Li Fang's words both complimented him and looked down on Lupin's potions knowledge, Snape expressed that he was very happy. When he heard Li Fang say, "Half-Blood Prince," the corners of his slightly raised mouth froze. The title of Half-Blood Prince was given to him when he was a criminal when he was a student. Now that he has become a mature old man, he suddenly heard the name of the prince, and his face was somewhat embarrassed. Li Fang took the textbook from Creature and threw it to Snape, saying, "This is your textbook. It's a wonderful note. This makes me more and more determined to learn potions from you every time I see this textbook." Quote. Snape looked at the Merlin ring and the textbook in his hand. After thinking for a while, he said, "Will you teach you how to boil the potion to exchange for the Merlin ring or meditate?" Snape already knew the effect of Merlin's magic ring. Of course, he would not be so foolish as to think that one potion science could be used for two ways to improve his strength. Considering that Li Fang demonstrated two methods in front of him, he must have other purposes. Snape, who couldn't help but long for strength, asked, "What else do you want to use another method in exchange for?" Li Fang scratched his eyebrows and Shanshan said, "Do you have a magic power amplifying potion?" Snape couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth and said angrily, "Be realistic, you might as well ask me if I have the formula." Li Fang blinked. "Although I haven't learned how to brew potions yet, in the future, when I learn the process of making potions and have the formula in hand, won't I be able to prepare it myself? Then you can drink the magic power amplifying potion as plain water." Snape knew what Li Fang was thinking as soon as he looked at his expression, and said speechlessly, "I told you very clearly that I have the formula, but I don't mention that the difficulty of cooking the magic amplifying potion is not something that a rookie like you can learn. Let's just talk about that. Where can you find extinct materials?" Li Fang grinned and thought silently. "To you, it is an extinct material, but in other worlds, it may be just weeds on the roadside. And judging from your tone, I don't think you use the magic amplification potion as a treasure. It just makes me cheaper. Meditation method or Merlin's magic ring, in exchange for your teachings and the formula of magic amplification potion." Although Snape is eager to improve his strength, he also knows how huge and difficult the content of potions is to learn. It is not something he can teach at all if he wants to. If Li Fang does not understand potions well enough, then the teaching time will be even longer. Therefore, as a professor at Hogwarts, he felt that he did not have that much time to teach Li Fang. After all, he still had a large group of students to teach and correct their homework. With a hint of regret, Snape threw his school textbook to Li Fang, turned around and left the secret room and said, "Sorry, I don't have time to teach you." Li Fang seemed to understand what Snape was thinking. He thought about it and said, "How about this? How about teaching me during this holiday? Whether I can learn it or not is my business." Compared to Merlin's ring, Snape prefers trading meditation. After all, it's just a magic gathering circle. It's not that he doesn't have it, but the effect is not as good as Merlin's ring. So when he heard that he could get meditation by teaching him for only one summer vacation, Snape paused, turned around, looked at Li Fang, and said, "Since you have used temptation spells on me before, unless you teach me the meditation method first, I will consider whether to teach you during the summer vacation." The distrust in the other party's words made Li Fang both embarrassed and excited. Needless to say, the reason for the embarrassment was because Li Fang heard that there was actually hope for a deal in Snape's words. Immediately, Li Fang Shanshan said, "I will give you the meditation method now. After you confirm the authenticity, come back to the secret room with the formula of the magic amplification potion and teach me. How about it?" It wouldn't take long for Snape to determine the authenticity of the meditation method. After thinking about it, he took the magic book from Li Fang, looked through the meditation method and took notes, and said, "Prepare the crucible and materials tonight. Mastering potions. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more."